right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Will you join me with the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I forgot to make sure I had a mic. We're missing a mic now.
I can take this one and we can roll.
All right, well, I'm taking this one. There we go. I hope it works. Sorry about that. So, welcome to the, welcome to the November 24, 2022 meeting of the Westport Select Board. We'd like to start the meeting today by acknowledging a couple of citizens. The first one I want to mention is Karen Wood Cambra. She was the daughter of Charlene Wood, and this meeting room is actually dedicated to Charlene Wood up on the plaque. And we were just talking about needing to actually call it the Charlene Wood meeting room. But our family, our thoughts and prayers are with the Karen's family as they mourn their loss. We also want to recognize Ronald Bunham LaPlante, who I didn't know, but I bet these guys do. He was a volunteer firefighter, an EMT here in Westport. He's a veteran, and he was a school bus driver for many years. And so I know he was very well known in town and much beloved from what I can see from the posting. So our sympathies go out to his family. Did anybody want to say anything about Bunham LaPlante?
Well, he's family. He's actually my wife's uncle. So obviously we appreciate his dedication to the town. He's a great guy to be around. Also for the motorsports fan, he's part of the Westport and the Tiverton race fans and teams at Seekonk Speedway. So he's also known there. So he was everywhere. Plus he was in the Bolton Green Fishing Club out of the VFW too. So a lot of people know him. He's a great guy. Sad loss.
All right, thank you. We also want to take a moment to recognize Veterans Day. I'm going to actually, Carol, if you want to come up front, because I want to talk about Veterans Day events, and I wanted to get, and you had an item on the agenda, so we'll get you out. So this is Carol Freitas. She's our Veteran Service Officer. So first we want to thank you for the ceremony that you put on Friday. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to attend, but I know Dick was there and Ann was there, and Steve, so thank you. Did anybody want to say anything about the event? Good job.
Well run.
Yeah.
And I know you're here because we have some donations, but you said there was some stuff you wanted to talk about with us. So do you want to do that first?
I can do that, yeah. So I just, to piggyback on what you were saying about Veterans Day, all of the feedback that I received was that the event went very well. We kept it short and sweet, about a half an hour. I know a lot of people appreciate that. I also want to thank the schools, Westport Elementary School, the middle school, and the Macomber School for inviting the veterans in for ceremonies on Wednesday the 8th. And the Council on Aging had a veterans breakfast in person again on the 10th. I'm sorry, not the 8th, the 9th and the 10th. So I want to thank them for that. We had about 16 veterans at the middle school. I think it was the largest group of veterans since I've been the VSO. So I'm very thankful for that. So some other things that I have going on, I did the survey back in April, and from that I created a series of what I call Vet Talks, which is informational sessions. So I've held 5 of them so far, and I have the last one this Friday coming up, and I've talked about different benefits from the different burial benefits, VA healthcare, disability compensation, Massachusetts state benefits for veterans, and this Friday will be about VA pension and survivors benefits. So those have been very well received. I've had about 30 people at each one. I want to thank Valerie for being there every Friday morning, filming them. So the videos are available online for people who can't make it. They can watch them online. And I also want to thank the VFW for hosting those for us. So that's going on. I have been doing some other outreach. I went to Oak Ridge Condominiums on November 1st. I did a presentation there for about 13 of their residents, and that went over well. And we did have our Veterans Appreciation Cookout on September 17th, and we had about 90 veterans and family members in attendance, so that was great. I did attend VSO training in Leominster in October, And I did pass my 3-year recertification. It's already been 3 years.
Wow.
So I'm good to go for another 3 years. So Westport will get their 75% reimbursement for veterans benefits. December coming up will be the recertification for every 6 months that we have to do for the current clients. We have 36 clients right now. I've added a new couple in August, a single veteran in September, and another single veteran in October. So the word is getting out that the benefit is available for veterans and their families in need. And then coming up in December, as long as these donations are accepted, I'm hoping to do a Christmas food basket giveaway. I'm looking at either the 21st or 22nd of December. I am hoping to get some additional donations of either non-perishable food or gift cards or some more monetary donations, so I can try to make up about 50 food baskets for veterans for Christmas.
So you're really not doing very much over there.
Sit back and feet in the desk.
Wow, that's a lot. Thank you so much for that update. You do so much for
Thank you.
veterans.
Thank you.
It occurred to me when you talked about you've recorded the sessions, and Val, help me if I'm wrong, we're not using Vimeo anymore, so if you're looking for recordings of these events, they're on YouTube now. So there's a Westport Community Television.
Government TV.
Westport.
It's under Westport Government. YouTube, then go Westport Government.
Okay, so Westport, so YouTube, go to YouTube, look for Westport Government TV, and all the things will be, all of the sessions, all the meeting recordings and things like that.
Yes,
are gonna be on YouTube.
and on the Veteran Services website, I have a page for Vet Talks, and I have a link to each of the videos on there as well as the presentation.
Great,
the
excellent.
handouts.
And if you're a veteran or are a spouse of a veteran, you should know Carol, and you should go check out her site because she wants to help you.
I do.
So we have a request from you to accept the following donations. $25 anonymous for the Veterans Food Pantry, and J&S Restaurant Enterprises, Inc., doing business as Cozy Nook Restaurant, $1,000 to the Veterans Discretionary Fund.
I'll move to accept.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye, that's unanimous. That was 5G on the calendar. Anything else, Carol, for us? Anybody have anything for Carol?
Just, the police and fire had a good turnout too with the Explorers and whatnot.
Yes.
That's great. And also it was good to see Jim Coyne out. He hasn't been out in a while, and he was there.
It was good to see him again, yes.
Yes, it was a
He's
good turnout.
gone through a lot in the last couple of months.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Carol.
Thank you.
So in the interest of trying to get people who are here who have shorter items, I'm going to take another one out of order. So this one's for 5A. So Mr. Fernandez, you can come take a seat. So we have a request from the Infrastructure Oversight Committee to hire Roger Fernandez as project manager for the Route 6 infrastructure work, subject to contract negotiations. Jim, do you want to give us a little overview on this one?
Sure. So this is the Route 6 project, the infrastructure project, the water and sewer that's being designed up along the Route 6 corridor from Fall River to Dartmouth. We did have earmarked through Senator Rodericks to fund a portion of that design, and it also included funding to hire a project manager. We've been looking for a project manager for about a year now, on and off. We've contacted a number of companies. This probably goes back about 3 months ago. We looked at different types of companies, larger project managers, similar to what we would have with the school, and then some smaller type firms, and we ended up interviewing. We called into interviews 3 companies. 2 of them came, Roger Fernandez with FernCorp, and we interviewed another larger company as well. And it appeared that just Roger was a better fit for what we have here in town. It's kind of an odd project. There's different permitting requirements going with the sewer and the water. There's just local knowledge, being familiar with Fall River. Mr. Fernandez grew up in Fall River, so he knows the territory around here, and he just interviewed very well, and I think he can bring a lot to the table. There was a 3-member subcommittee that interviewed, and then we referred it to the Infrastructure Oversight Committee, and they agreed with that, and I think the recommendations to the Board of Selectmen that we start contract negotiations and come up with a contract for the board at some point.
Thank you. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and what brings you to this project?
Sure. So first, thank you for having me. Appreciate your time. So I've got a background in engineering, business, and finance. I'm sure you've seen at this point. Maybe you've seen my CV at this point. I've also got over 25 years now of experience directly related to these type of projects that I've sort of shepherded through concept to completion. And that includes the technical aspects of it. I know you hired a consultant, Kleinfelder, who's working on the projects. I think it's always a good idea to have a second set of eyes. We'll go through a value engineering exercise, but I also am very familiar with the public administrative sort of aspects of these projects, sort of what it takes from a permitting, intermunicipal discussions, and even items that I'm sure are going to come up at town meeting and before this board with respect to different issues associated with the project. So,
So David, you're not muted. So David Cole joined because for the internet discussion, David's going to participate, so we can hear him talking, but David, you gotta mute yourself, or we're going to turn him down. Sorry about that.
no worries.
Take him down a notch.
So in any case, I think I've got a fair amount of experience working on these projects, like I said, from concept to completion, including proof of concept. I know you've gone through an economic study, so the projects looked at the economic benefits, and you've got a fair amount of groundwork laid out for this particular project. And so my hope is that I can help the town sort of bring the project to the point where you've got shovels in the ground and maybe you're installing some sewer pipe.
Thank you. So Steve, I know you're on the committee. Did you want to add anything?
No, I mean, he brought up some good points. Obviously, the more advanced we are, the more apt we are to get in line for projects. After the holidays, I have a forum, get everybody in the north end there speaking. We need them to help us put that together because Jim's just got a few little projects going on. I appreciate everybody working hard on this, especially Bob Daler and Jim. But it's a needed part of the project. It's not coming out of taxation, it's coming out of the $1 million funds, and it's something we need to keep going.
Thank you. Anybody have any comments or questions?
I'll move that we recommend hiring Mr. Fernandez subject to contract negotiations with our town administrator.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous. Welcome aboard.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you so
Look
much.
forward to working with you.
Appreciate it. Thanks again.
Thank you.
That sounds really good, too.
So that was 5A. We're gonna bump another one around. This is like plain, I'm sorry that I didn't reorganize this before the agenda went out, but let's go to 5D because we have Ross Moran here with us. So 5D is a request for approval of a conservation restriction on the Kirby Brook Farm located at 333 Drift Road, map 52, lot 15. And I have actually a picture of this one.
Madam Chair, I also want to mention Maury May did a lot on that interviewing too, because if he quits, he's my secretary, I'm in trouble. So I want to make sure I recognize him.
So this is the parcel in question. So
There
you
we
just orient us to this right here is
Yes.
Drift Road?
So it's 333 Drift Road. So my name is Ross Moran. I'm the Executive Director of the Westport Land Conservation Trust. Here tonight to seek your approval of a conservation restriction that is being generously donated to the Westport Land Conservation Trust as the sole holder of the restriction. So in this case, we do a lot of partnership with the town, but the town doesn't have interest in this particular conservation restriction. Why is this one really important? The reason is that wetland that you see in the middle there is primarily almost all Kirby Brook. And so Kirby Brook is similar to Angeline Brook here in town, is a cold water fishery resource. And in 2021, the state biologists actually found brook trout at the mouth of Kirby Brook, a critical mass of them, and a mass of them that are certain size as well. It contains about 1,500 feet of Kirby Brook, this property, whereas the convergence of two tributaries, it's almost entirely all what we describe as Biomap 2 habitat, which is good habitat for a number of things here in town. The parcel itself is also important, ranked highly for climate resiliency because it has a significant amount of Kirby Brook on it. And that brook is one of the larger freshwater resources into the East Branch. It has flood loading, longer term as, some of the water may push up further high tides through the East Branch. Preserving properties like this and preserving the integrity of Kirby Brook is an important one from a climate resiliency perspective. And then one other thing that I wanted to mention in terms of why sort of this particular parcel is important is that, if you look at the mouth of Kirby Brook and go about a mile south of it, I have a couple of things if anybody wants to take a look at this. The point on this map right here is the mouth of Kirby Brook. And the mouth of Kirby Brook, going about a mile south, which is the extent of this photo, or this map here, has some of the best salt marsh still left in the East Branch, outside some of the islands further down. And so, preserving some of the fresh water that is coming out of Kirby Brook is really, really important to maintaining that salt marsh longer term. So in this case, I'm happy to answer some further questions about it, but the property is a former small dairy farm that the current owner intends to restore the front of the property a little bit towards that kind of gentleman farm type property longer term.
And just to be clear, so this is basically the transfer of a restriction. So the town doesn't have any,
Town doesn't have any interest in this?
Anything.
Yep. Just the land trust holds the interest in it.
Great. Anybody have any questions or comments for Ross?
Just a comment, if you look at that section of Kirby Brook on both sides of Route 88, it's completely wooded, and it's pretty much reverting to its natural state, other than a small laneway that goes up near it. And as you said, the marshland below it is, very important, and also directly across the river from that is the now former Nokachoke site, which much of that has been also put in restrictions. So
yes,
on both sides of the river there, we have a really great buffer, and this I just think is a great thing. So with that, I will move it.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous. Thank you,
thank
Ross.
you very much.
Ross, do you have one more copy?
Yeah,
Call for the record.
And I just wanted to add, tomorrow, I came here last meeting for Berry Hill Farm, and I'm happy to share that we're closing on the property tomorrow.
Great.
And we have a representative from the Community Preservation Committee coming to take a photo with Bob and Tina, our board president, at 2:30. If there's a member of the board of select board here who's interested and can make that time slot, you're more than welcome to come. And if you can't, and Jim's available, any one of you would be great. So.
Thank you. I'm taking one more out of order because I know we have the internet advisory discussion here. I'm just trying to get some people that are here before we do the internet conversation. So let's talk about 5E. 5E is the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Well, Roger Menard, Chairman, Zoning Board of Appeals. It's got two things to discuss. The first is we are going to be, the Zoning Board of Appeals is in the process of going through the motions of increasing their petition fees, or at least requesting them. Now, the Zoning Board of Appeals has a fee of $300 for each petition. That has been the same fee for years and years and years and years. And our costs obviously have increased. The Zoning Board of Appeals petition fee is supposed to be revenue neutral, meaning that the town doesn't make any money and it doesn't lose any money for each petition. Right now we're losing a lot of money because the fee is not representative of what it actually costs us. The advertising fees have gone up, postage have gone up, the labor costs have gone up. In the past 15, 20 years, you can imagine that it's gone up significantly. So what we did was we took a look at what has actually cost us over the past few years and projecting what it will cost us next year for an average petition fee. And it turns out to be about $500. Now, when I talked to Jim about this, he had suggested that we also look at potentially adjusting it by type of petition. We have 4 different types of petitions. We have findings, we have variances, we have special permits. Each of those is a different process. But in general, they all take about They all take about the same time, except for in a couple of cases. Notably, the cell tower special permit, we know now, having experience, this is going to take a long time. It's not a 1 or 2 meeting type of petition. There's a lot of public input. There's obviously a lot of resources that are involved in that type of petition. So we are looking into now that we have experience with that, we can assign a fair market value of what that would actually cost. The other one that we have some experience with, I was on the board when is 40B, which is not really in our bylaws, but it is a state law that the Zoning Board of Appeals manages the 40B, low-income housing. Anyway, that is a very long process. That doesn't take 1 or 2. That is a much, much longer process.
And contentious.
And contentious. So all I'm right now is advising you that the board is working on this. Within the next 1 or 2 sessions, we will have ironed out the details. Like I said, it's looking like roughly $500 for in order to break even, not make money, not lose money, $500 for a standard permit, standard everyday run-of-the-mill permit. Something more like in the order of $1,500 to $2,500 for cell tower or 40B, because we can justify at least $1,500 just based on past history. We're looking into the nitty-gritties of back in time as far as what it took us to do the last 40B, which took like a year. I mean, it was a long time.
It was more than that.
Well, it actually was broken up because there was a lawsuit, and so it's a really hard
2 to
time.
3 year
So,
process, though.
right now, all I'm doing is advising you that the board is working, and I want to get some feedback of how you feel. Now, from what I understand, is that in order to implement the fee, it has to be approved by the zoning, requested by the zoning board and approved by the select board, and that's all that's required. Is that correct?
No, we're only talking about one. We're not talking about increasing the
Yeah, correct,
fees.
yeah.
There's no public hearing.
We would hold a public hearing.
We would hold a public hearing. All right. So you don't have a recommendation yet
Not
for what the
like I
fee
said,
should
but
be?
I'm just advising you on this because I want to make sure that we're doing all the right steps in the right order and sort of giving you a heads up. And I'm certain that the $500 fee is very firm because I can support that with data. I can show you the data that says $500 is what it takes. So.
How about on findings, though? Isn't that generally more cut and dry?
Not really. We get through with most of our admin appeals. We get very few variances. Special permits we get a lot of, and findings we generally do in 1 or 2 meetings. And what generally happens is we try to stagger so that we have 2 petitions in an evening. And even if both of those petitions are continued to the next meeting, and then we either approve or reject them, it still only took, on average, 1 meeting per petition. So on the average, so what we're also looking at is potentially, there have been some that have dragged on for 4 or 5 meetings for no reason other than people just not getting the documents and not doing the work. So we are looking also into potentially an added fee for hearings that go beyond the second hearing. Because again, we need to be revenue neutral, and that costs us money. That costs us labor, that costs us a lot. So anyway, that's, unless I have any input. But again, like I said, this is just a heads up.
Do you have any mechanism by which people who are limited income, if say they're coming for a variance to, build an accessory apartment or something, that when they're in need, do you have
If somebody's
any?
going to build an accessory apartment, they're going to be spending $10,000, $20,000 or more.
And that may be everything they have.
Another $200 is.
And again, I didn't mean that I meant, if you could waive the entire fee. Do you have a mechanism in place for that for people
We have
who
no
have
mechanism
special
for waiving any
circumstances?
fee.
Nothing.
I mean,
Okay.
I don't know how we would do that.
Well, by income, you'd look at what their income is and like they do on every other thing, you know, as if they are below a certain threshold, a certain percentage of the poverty level, you would then waive the fees for someone like that
And if,
who is
uh,
trying to get something done in order to stay in their home or whatever, and they needed a variance in order to do so.
I mean, if something that the select board wants us to implement, we're certainly more than willing to do that. I mean, I don't want to stifle
I'm
petition
just,
fees.
we don't seem to
petitions.
have any mechanisms like that for people of limited incomes in any process that we have in
We
town.
don't.
We don't really,
So you think maybe the-
and to me, that just is not at all what the public service that we're charged with doing should represent. You should always have some way to accommodate people who are having a tough time. And especially in these times when things are getting more and more expensive and people are having a harder time staying in their homes. I have no problem as a contractor paying the $1,500 if I have to go before a board in order to do that. I realize that those kind of fees you need to pay the lawyers, the engineers, everyone, the reviews, the mailing, the advertising, all that. No problem at all. It's just, you know, we don't seem to make any accommodations for people who have limited income
So-
for any of it, and it's not just you,
Okay.
it's all over, it's all over
Like
town.
I said, you know, I will certainly take the recommendation for the select board about any adjustment to our fees to accommodate something like that.
So how about if we have you, I think when you come back to us, I think we'd like to know, once you've done your analysis, we want to see the analysis. I want to know, and I personally would want to know, like, what are other towns charging for this kind of
I've
thing?
actually looked into that.
Yeah, we both.
Okay.
I have.
And then I think that what you're talking about though, Brian, is like overall, is there a way to request relief or some sort of thing? I think maybe we should have Jim kind of put that on his to-do list about, because I would assume if we're setting the fees, if the select board is setting the fees and the select board, you know, how do we make sure we have an authority to be able to waive them or reduce them or something like that? So I wouldn't want the zoning board to have to
Okay.
Well, I'm
tackle
just-
that part of it.
Again, I've had experience going through these hearings and things, and in other towns, their charges are obscene.
Yes.
In Falmouth, it's $30,000 before you can even put a shovel in the ground.
Oh,
You know, with all the stuff that
Yes.
they, you know, if you're
Yes.
anywhere near the
Right.
water. But here, we're much more reasonable, and I'm not saying we're in any way, our fees are actually really low. And we certainly should be increasing them because they haven't been increased for a long time. Again, I'm just talking about the mom and pop that need, you know, maybe need that accessory apartment to be able to stay in their own
Oh,
apartment.
yes,
or,
right.
you
But
know,
again, I like what Shawna said, though, that'd be something that
we address townwide.
you
Yeah.
just, or, you know, when we come back and say we want $500 per petition, you can then say, okay, but, you know, for people under X amount of dollars, we're gonna waive the fee, and that's perfectly fine.
And even
And by the way, I have-
reducing the fee to 200, say, for them, so at least you get something,
Right,
but it's
right.
not, you know.
I have looked across
It's so
about a dozen towns, you know, in our area, and we're on the very low end. There is one that's in the 250-ish, but there are a lot in the $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $1,200.
Yeah.
So we're still very low.
Very low for all, and I mean,
All right.
the most I've ever paid in Westport for a building permit is $1,700, and in Falmouth, I paid, you know, for the same permit over $10,000 with all the fees by the time.
Okay,
it was
so,
all said and done.
So you're going to come back to us with
Yes.
fees, proposed fees. Is there anybody else has input as they're considering that? All right, so there's nothing for us
Nothing-
to act on
Nothing
that.
that action today, again, it's just an
And,
advisory.
and then the second thing we had is a request to reclassify the clerk's position.
Right.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Maria Branco has been our clerk since 2018, about 4 years. She was hired as a principal clerk, and her position was to be available 2 hours a day, twice a week. She's a part-time employee. She works mostly 4 days a week in the town hall, and the rest of the time she works supporting the zoning board, you know, meetings and other efforts. So she has to be available 2 hours a day, twice a week at the town hall to interface with potential petitioners. She advises the ZBA chair and vice chair on any new petition that comes up. She advertises the new petitions twice. She sends out notices to the abutters. She attends the meetings, generates the meeting minutes, generates the decision. That's kind of what you would expect a principal clerk to do. Along with that, she also does updating the database, updating all the files that go on the shared drive. Again, that's something you would expect a principal clerk to do. Over the last 4 years, though, we've used her for a lot more than that. We had a meeting just this past week, and the zoning board unanimously agreed that her position really is more in the line of an administrative assistant than as a principal clerk, and I'll tell you the reasons why. Most of her tasks are legally sensitive, which means she's required to complete all the tasks within a very rigid time frame. When she gets a petition in, she has to arrange all the members to get a schedule so that a meeting can be scheduled within a very specific time frame. She also has to do the notices within a very legal time frame. The decisions have to be done in a very legal time frame. The sending out all the notices. I mean, all these things, she just can't wait for it to, I mean, and by the way, if she doesn't, the law says it's approved by default. So it's a lot of responsibility, and she does it quite well. She interfaces directly with petitioners and petitioners' attorneys' representatives to ensure that the petitioner's application is properly completed and the appropriate type of appeal assigned to it. Now, what this is important, and we've run across this several times in the times that I have been on the zoning board, is that somebody will fill out a petition, fill out all the boxes, and then as soon as the town clerk stamps it, it becomes a legal document, and we have to schedule a meeting. Even if it's wrong, we have to schedule a meeting. We have to attend the meeting. We have to write meeting minutes. If it isn't signed, if the wrong box is checked, if there's anything wrong with it, we go to the meeting and we have to reject it. That costs the petitioner another fee, and it costs the town because we had to the zoning board of appeal, we're all volunteers. Maria's the only one that's paid, but still, we have to pay her for her to be there. We got to pay for her to write the meeting minutes. We have to, I mean, the whole gamut of things that we have to pay for is lost unless we have somebody who can screen it first and say, you know, you didn't do this, you didn't sign here, you didn't check this box, you know, so that when we get to the meeting, we don't just deny it, you know, just because of the improper filing. So that's one thing she does for us. She also interfaces with the petitioner's lawyer to make sure that the documents that are supposed to back it up are provided on a timely basis. Previously, and I mean for years, we would literally get documents the day of. And what did we have to do? Continue the meeting. Because we're not going to go looking through drawings and documents and make a decision on looking at something for 15 minutes. So again, that's important. She interfaces with the abutters regarding ZBA procedural rules and procedures, as well as petition information, and upon request, provides requested documentation within a required time frame. She has 10 days from an abutter or anybody requesting any documentation to provide it. She interfaces directly with town council, along with the ZBA chair, in efforts relating to the zoning board. This interface is necessary to ensure that all the advice and the documentation that town council provides is distributed to all the members. It's really only Maria who is supposed to be providing documents and information to all the members. She is supposed to be the focal point. Otherwise, it could be a breach of meeting law, the meeting laws. She manages the correspondence to and from the town council, as I said, as well as the petitioner, the petitioner's attorney, the petitioner's representative.
So I just want to, I know you've got a lot written down there. So, so she's the only paid employee working for the ZBA, right? And with all the legal implications and all the stuff that's going on with ZBA, and she's like the only person. And so what you're asking is for a reclassification of the position. So just without talking about the merits, which I know you have more, but without going into the merits, can you just talk to procedurally, this is not a union position.
No, this position is regulated by the town personnel bylaws. Right. So the personnel board would have to make a recommendation, but it has to go through this process first. The Board of Selectmen has to refer it to the personnel board. for them to consider the change. And they would recommend back to the Board of Selectmen or possibly the town meeting if the change is warranted.
Okay.
But we do not have the ability to change it without town meeting.
Without town meeting, that's correct.
If it's not, because it's not already a class position, administrative assistant, I think is what we were talking about here, is not already in the personnel bylaws for the ZBA.
It is, so the Personnel Board could recommend, and there's a provision in the Personnel Board that allows them to enact a change prior to town meeting as a temporary measure. So they could do that.
But procedurally, it would be whether we want to recommend sending this to the Personnel Board for review, I think is the procedure. So I know he has more that he wants to tell us about the great work she does, and I am sure she does great work over there. Is there anybody that has any concerns about whether, or thoughts about whether we should refer this to the Personnel Board?
No, I'll move that we do that.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Is there anything else I didn't let you say that you really
Well,
want
the
to
only
say?
thing that is important here is that because this is revenue neutral, this shouldn't cost the town anything. Even if it did, even if we didn't increase the fees to make it representative of our costs, she's a part-time person. It is an absolutely negligible impact on town budget. I mean, it's down there in that last digit. So.
We're watching every penny on the town budget,
I know,
unfortunately.
I Kenny, but
I'd just like to add to this. Prior to me getting on the board in 2019, and Maria got on in 2018, so prior to that, zoning board had all it could do to get everything in line during the time frames that they were supposed to be, and some of those instances were happening. She does an immense job, not just a little, and she keeps the boat floating for the members that are there. That's my opinion of what's going on there.
So we have a motion and a second to refer to the classification of this position to the Personnel Board. That was pretty much it,
And
right?
I'm available to talk to the personnel board if they so desire.
Yeah, Jim will figure out who that is. All right, all in
Get you
favor?
in touch.
Aye. That's unanimous. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And I know that the internet, go ahead. I know the internet discussion is like, everybody is like an anxious waiting, but we have an officer of law in here, which means there's a town employee probably on town time, so I'm gonna take him out of order. So I think you are here for 5C, the Old County Road, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So, and I actually have a picture for this one. Can you please introduce yourself?
Oh, hi, I'm Lieutenant Johnny Kudo. How are you doing? Good evening.
Lieutenant, welcome.
Thank you.
So Jim, do you want to tell us what this is about?
Sure, we had a request from the Westport Police Department, the chief, to add a handicap parking spot on Old County Road in front of the head store. His recommendation would be on the north side of the road, right, essentially in front of the door, just east of the driveway, existing driveway. That's where we are. We did get comments from the Highway Department who requested that, he's recommending that they cut back the sidewalk on that side of the street, replace the granite curbing, and modify the drainage to accommodate a wider handicap parking spot. There would be some significant cost of doing that. There's drainage there now. The curbing would have to be pushed back closer to the store. We do have the layout there that you could do it. And at some point, that might be something I think we may want to consider, but in the interim, it may be just as well to put the signs there and designate a spot in front. I will say that I did hear from Jeff Bull from the Landing Commission, and I also spoke to Martin Costa. I didn't get a final recommendation from Martin Costa, but they were looking at a spot across the street in front of the watershed building where it's off the main laneway, I guess. There's more room on that side of the road, but the problem with that is if you park there, you'd have to access the vehicle, go westerly along Old County Road, 100-some feet to the crosswalk, then cross over, then backtrack back to the store. It's quite a distance, and to a certain extent, it defeats the purpose of the spot. So I'm going to let you take it from here.
Well, thank you. I'm trying to catch up on this. I was read in by the chief. Apparently, when there was a decision to change move the lines on Old County Road. Part of that decision was to do that, to make the space for the handicapped parking in front of, I believe it's 488. I know that the across the street area, that's the Watershed Alliance.
That's correct.
I know they have placed their handicap parking behind. As a matter of fact, I think I saw you today when
I was
went-
there today.
I went
yes.
by to check to see what was going on.
I was having my ice cream for dinner from the head store.
My only concern is that the road was moved, the lines were moved, but yet the space was not done. And if you go into as far as some of the, Mr. Bull's comments, if you read the bylaw, it says that, that space is supposed to be as close to the front door. And those both options that he put were behind the building. And, now that's not following that part of it, having to go all the way up there and across the street. Like I said, that's problematic at best.
So the request we have from the chief is to designate one handicap spot as near as possible to 488. So this is the store. So it sounds like they're talking about, there might be benefit of putting handicap spots over by the Watershed on the street, but what we're talking about right here is by the store.
Right in front of the store.
Right in front of the
And
store.
there's a small ramp right there for the driveway, right after that, I
Yes.
believe.
Yeah.
So
There is going to be
I
some
think right there.
manufacturing there,
Right here.
but from what I am told
'Cause
and
this is the
understand,
crosswalk, right?
the
Yeah.
highway department is
There's a crosswalk is.
to take care of all of those adjustments that need.
All right,
Well, they
so,
already, at least there's a place for, wheelchair access and whatnot.
Correct.
Right in front of it at the crosswalk, so I'll move that we have it designated
Second.
as requested.
so we're designating, you're moving that we designate right in proximity of this front door, like roughly
Yeah.
where this truck is, or
Hopefully, maybe a little
roundabout.
further up.
Is that acceptable? Is that what you guys are recommending?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so, and then what would we need to do, this highway just needs to put a sign up, right?
We have to put 2 signs up, yes.
Okay,
What about the changes Chris
Paint
said?
the,
Those changes, I think that's a future improvement if they have to
Oh.
do that.
next time the road gets redone.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And that can be done with chapter 90
Chair?
money.
yes.
Just wondering if the business owner of that establishment had any comments on this for us, or?
We did notify the business owner, he's aware that it was coming up tonight. I know Paula spoke with him.
Yeah, he didn't have a problem with it. He said that he just doesn't want his employee driveway blocked,
Yeah.
which is the little shell area right before the
Yep.
store, I guess.
Yep.
He said that's where his employees
Yeah,
park.
that's always,
Other than that,
and that's always been a driveway
he gave the
there.
impression he was coming in, he said he was fine with it.
Yeah, okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye, that's unanimous. Lieutenant, did you have anything else while you're here? We didn't acknowledge the resignation of one of your officers. Should we do that here now? Just take that one.
Resignation or
Retirement.
retirement?
Retirement. Sorry. So we skipped, in our skipping around on the agenda today, we skipped 3A. So 3A is where I am. 3A is to accept a request from Chief Pelletier, Chief of Police, to approve the retirement of Officer David Leet after 27-plus years of service, and to appoint him as a reserve police officer. And I think you're recommending approval, right?
That's correct.
Anybody want to say anything about Officer Leet?
Well, we appreciate it.
Known David since
Yeah.
the Macomber School, pretty much, since kindergarten. And he's a great guy, and it's unfortunate that he had to retire, but, I have no problem moving that and also moving him to appoint him as a reserve police officer.
Second.
And I thank him so much for his 27 years of service to the town.
We used to give I think.
Well, I'm a little longer than I've known you, John.
We used to give a nice letter when people retired, and retirees are telling me they haven't been getting it lately, so can we find
Can we
out?
write
send
him a
him a
letter,
letter.
please?
Well, we used to have like almost a citation type of thing, nice.
Will you look that up for us, please? All right, so we have a motion and a second to approve the retirement and to appoint a reserve police officer. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous. Anything else going on you want to talk about?
Nobody's commenting on my rockin' beard here.
Totally.
I almost didn't recognize you in the back there for a minute.
No shave November.
Okay, no shave November, so this
I've
is
never seen
raising
you with
funds
that.
for,
Yeah, the chief puts together a team, the individual officers have to pay a certain amount of money, and the union agrees to match whoever in it, and we did, and now we have beards, but I can't grow it right anyways.
and I think I saw on social media, there is a battle of, what are we calling it?
Bowling.
There's a bowling.
battle. Yeah, I just saw that, 27th, I believe.
On the
yes.
27th of November at Holiday Lanes, we have police versus fire
Yes.
at the Holiday Lanes, so
We
take
eat
a
a lot
look.
of turkey, that should be interesting.
Thank you for coming by, we appreciate
Have a
it.
great evening.
Have a good night, John.
And now for everybody who's been waiting and waiting and waiting
Thank you.
for the internet conversation. You guys, you gentlemen can come forward.
Do you want to just quickly go through that?
Oh, let's, while we're getting our act together, we have 3B, request to appoint Amy Abate, Eric Abate, Brett Sylvia, Megan Sylvia as public weighers at A&E Metals, 449 American Legion Highway.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, there we go.
David, can you hear us?
Did he nod his head or something?
Are you talking about me? Yes, I hear you.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry,
Okay,
I should have said Mr. Paul, I apologize.
I'm going to find the presentation. So we have here tonight, we have Keith Novo, the town's IT director. Welcome. And we have Jeff Christensen with Entry Point. We are finally have the report. In your packet today, there's the long report, but we have a briefer presentation for you tonight. So you want to tell us a little bit about what you're working on, and then we can talk about.
Yes, so we've been working as a committee probably a lot of the year, 8 months maybe, with the Internet Committee, and we've gone through a few drafts of the report, and it's now ready to finalize. So we've been looking at the feasibility of town, it could take various forms. It could be town-owned, it could be town-controlled, it could be town-influenced infrastructure for the internet. And so, this is an iterative process. And so tonight, I think we're looking for an adoption, and Sean will cover that, an adoption of the plan as it is, and a continuation of the process, but not anything more decisive, definitive than that. So, if this issue is sort of not on your pane of glass, you might wonder why did the town get involved in this when there is coverage here in the town. The easy answer is this is now essential infrastructure. So when the internet emerged in the early 90s, what happened is the cable companies and the telephone companies used their existing infrastructure, figured out how to make the internet work across that infrastructure, and off we went. So nobody stepped back and said, how should this work? It was just, we've got this infrastructure, this is either an opportunity or a death sentence, and they use their infrastructure and move forward. So what we've ended up with is cable infrastructure and telephone infrastructure. Cable has more capacity, so the reason Charter Spectrum is dominant in your area is that their pipe is bigger than DSL, which was the telephone infrastructure. An important thing to note is that competition happens at the infrastructure layer. So what do we mean by that? That means if you want to compete against the cable company, you've got to build your own infrastructure, which is an expensive process. So part of what we've been working on as a committee is looking at what if we moved competition further down in the stack? And what we mean by that is build one robust fiber optic network, plenty of capacity, and move competition to the service layer so that any service provider can come onto that infrastructure and compete. Does that make sense? So rather than competing multiple sets of infrastructure, how about we just build one, open it up, that's called open access, and really lower the barriers to entry so you can get many service providers instead of one or two.
So I just want to point out these, because this took me a while. I've seen this deck a number of times. It took me a while. So notice this is the UPS and FedEx. This is the cable and the telephone on two completely separate roads here.
Yep.
Whereas infrastructure as a utility, they're sharing the road. So that subtlety was lost on me the first couple times I saw this. I just pointed out. All right, so I think we're now on the next slide right now.
Yeah, so it's like the roads. The public owns the roads essentially, and they're open as long as you follow the rules. They're open to, any private sector providers. Same as the airports. We work like the airports, where it's a shared infrastructure, open and available to private providers. So, if the town goes forward, some key ideas that the committee focused on. One, nobody would be forced to participate. So often when you do a betterment in Massachusetts, it's assumed that everybody, if the betterment passes, everybody's going to participate. And so in this case, it would be a voluntary or an opt-in program. Town revenues used to initiate the network, there would be a mechanism to refund those. So it wouldn't be the money goes out and never comes back. It would be whatever's used to initiate it would come back into the town budget. And then the ongoing operation of the network, it would be like a utility, which is self-sustaining, right? You're not building profits, you would build reserves, but it would be self-sustaining and the rates would be a consequence of that. But we'll get to fiber.
And I cannot overemphasize enough, not dependent on subsidies from the town. Now, we have been looking at how we maybe take advantage of infrastructure money and grants and things like that to reduce the cost to the consumers. But the idea here is that the subscribers are paying for it. That's just so important. Okay.
And that would be spread out over time, not all of it.
Yeah, they've got some detail coming up.
All right, so key objectives, these won't surprise you. Often it will be cost that's the main objective. In this case, based on the data from the survey, speed and reliability seem to be more important than cost. Meaning there are probably people in town, so the way cable works is the further away you get from the node, the reliability deteriorates. So people that are close to a node probably are having a decent experience, but people that are at the end of, out at the end of the road, the digital road, may have a very different experience. So first was speed and reliability, second, cost, third, increased competition at the service layer, fourth, build a state-of-the-art network. What you're going to see is these networks are going to evolve and they're going to play an ever bigger role in the economy. So we all know we're in a digital economy. The importance of that is going to grow exponentially over time, not just in a minor way, it will be significant. And then last of all, introduce new services that can come across the network through this open kind of environment. You kick in anything you want to add. All right, so there was a survey done in 2021. We've listed here that 543 residents and 54 businesses responded. There is, the people that are having the worst experience are probably going to be the loudest, but there was a lot of dissatisfaction with unreliability, cost, and a lack of competition. Those things were prominent. And then from the business community, 80% would welcome access to a high-speed fiber optic network. If you're not in this space, you may not appreciate the difference between cable and DSL is the telephone infrastructure. There's a lot of talk about 5G and the capacity of fiber optics. First of all, cable is dependent on fiber now, so they've got fiber to their nodes. So they don't go all the way to the home, but they do have fiber to their nodes. But fiber optics capacity it's more than 150 million megabits per second. So we've represented this circle here as 25 million, but they've demonstrated propagating a signal for 1,000 kilometers at 150 million megabits per second. We show you the average speed here in town based on speed tests that are run, and you know, you're not getting over 100 megabits. Fiber's got the capacity for 150 million megabits. So it is 50-year infrastructure. It's gonna take you 50 to 100 years down the road.
One of the exercises we did a couple times, it's not in this deck, but we looked at the the internet speed test.
Yeah.
So if you go on when you're irritated at your network and you're in your internet speed test, they had all the data from everyone that was hitting our node, and we looked at what we think we're paying for in the advertising that we're getting from Spectrum, and what people are actually realizing when they go run these speed tests, and it's like half of, it's really quite low.
Yeah, there's a slide on that.
Oh, is that in here?
Yeah, there is,
Okay,
yeah.
sorry, I didn't look ahead.
Yeah, no, you're good. Sean.
All right. And also, this graphic, I also liked, see, this is the size relationships here. That one also took me a minute to kind of get.
Yeah, the pipe is exponentially bigger.
So then, okay, money.
All right, money. So what would this cost? So because you're spread out, I came out 2-3 months ago and drove to town with Keith and just looked at distances, went, I think, on all the major roads in the town. You know, when we do this kind of analysis, like we're working with Chelsea and Revere, and they're very dense. The average number of households per build, per premise, is between 2 and 3. So where you're spread out, we've got this nice rural feel, they're very compact. And so their numbers reflect that, because the infrastructure cost is just different with the amount of population they have. So I look at these numbers and they seem high, but they're not high really relative to what people are paying on their cable bill. We've broken it down. What would the infrastructure cost? That assumes a 20-year financing. Then there's a maintenance and operations cost. What would it take to maintain on an ongoing basis the network? We've got $9.99 for ISP. That number does assume that it's open access and that there's competition. If you don't have competition, it'll be at least double that. But with competition, particularly at a regional level, we're confident you can get to $9.99 or lower. And then we've put in $4 for the public access. The funding for public access is through a cable franchise, and that's, as people cut the cord, that's diminishing. So that will go away on its own over time. But the $4, something that David on the committee insisted we focus on was sustaining that and making it viable. So it comes out to, based on the take rate, if you have a 60% take rate, that spreads the shared cost of the infrastructure across more people. So a projection of $70 a month at a 60% take rate versus at a 40% take rate at $85.
And I know there's going to be more to talk about the numbers, but there's another numbers slide that we should talk about before we do that.
So total cost, total projected costs, range, it's 21 to 22 million projected. And most of this is going to be aerial, just because of the amount of rock you have in the town. So you bring in a contractor. Right now, there's been a build going on this year to connect town buildings. So it would be that kind of infrastructure work up on the poles, which would mean we would need to get permission to go up onto the poles before it started. But that's, let's say it's a $22 million project. This is a projection of what you're spending currently. So this does assume that 6,000 people are connected to the internet today. It may be a little lower than that. There may be some percentage that are not connected to a wire. But if you take a national number, which is $68, that's actually going up. They're starting to announce rate increases. There's inflation, so they've got to ration out. And just multiply that out. That means that the town today is spending $5 million. you know, it's happening household by household, business by business, but as an aggregate, you're spending $5 million. And then a 20-year spend, and then 20 years is what we've financed the infrastructure modeling across. So just under 100 million is what's happening today. So the money's there, it's being allocated, it's just going a different stream.
So I just want to dial back, because this one is another one. It took me a couple meetings to kind of get, right? When we look at take rate, so we looked at, first of all, there's only about 4,000 homes that have cable TV. We don't know how many people have internet, because the Charter is not, the Spectrum doesn't have to tell us that. But if we looked at projection for buildable lots and buildable businesses and things like that, it was about 7,000. That felt a little too high to the committee. So the committee agreed, kind of looked at a 6,000 potential drops to receive internet. So the take rate is, of those 6,000 drops, how many people will actually sign up for broadband? So if only 40% of those people sign up, then this is the little bit higher cost. So the infrastructure then has to get divided among those to meet that $49. If 60% take it, there's more infrastructure required because you have drops to more homes, but they have more people to take it. So this is the $34. So that take rate is how many people are going to buy in to the service, because the more people that buy in, the less expensive it is per household. Okay.
And it actually will even out over time, because if somebody signs up a year after the network's built, they don't get, they don't bypass the cost of the infrastructure. You actually charge them at least what everybody else paid, and it would come into the maintenance and operation fund. So it would come in over time, and it would be a shared benefit, but you've got to look at it day one, what is the monthly cost going to be, because that's what people are used to.
And just one more point I want to make before, and then Brian, I hear you. That the other thing is that a lot of people want to know why we don't have competition in Westport, and why do we only have Charter. So we talked a little bit about before, Charter already had the wire in the ground, right? So they didn't have to do anything. They already had the cable in the ground, and so they just had to be able to develop the technology to run the internet on it, right? But the reason that we don't have competition on this is because it's a $20 million investment for someone to come into Westport, and they'd have to invest $20 million in order to provide this infrastructure. And so far, nobody has really been signing up and beating down our door to spend $20 million for their $5 million a year that they're going to get. And then the other component of this is, if it's municipal infrastructure, you finance it with municipal bonding, which spreads that cost over a longer period of time at a lower interest rate. So if Charter were to come in and build this, I don't know what the bond, I don't know how they bond, but you're talking about 5-year bonding for a company like Charter, where we would be able to go over 20 years. So that is the other way it kind of makes it affordable. And then you add in, if you have people competing for actually subscribing to the internet, then you're not a captive audience. So, Brian, I think.
No, I just want to, you're showing that number of $68 a month. That currently, for basic internet service, I'm paying over $75, I believe, almost $80 a month just for that. And that's keep telling us that's going to go up, that's going to go up. So potentially, this has the potential to be a little more cost savings, and it's definitely going to allow more competition. We have a no-compete clause with the cable, or if anyone comes in and provides cable, they have to charge the same rates as Charter. For the TV, but not for the internet. But we don't have that clause in our contract with Charter for our internet.
Right.
I can tell you from personal experience, my wife, and she hates having to do this. She works from home, and she has an office on Route 6. And I can't tell you how many dozens of times she's had to leave home and go to the office on Route 6 because the internet at the house is not working. Yeah. And she's very busy, and having to get dressed, get in the car, drive. I realize it's only 3-4 miles, but to have to do that when she could be using that time effectively and not having to spend it going back and forth, it drives her crazy. It really does, and it drives me crazy that every time we have a windstorm or a bad rainstorm, oh, we have no internet again. Okay, I guess I can't, do this or that, it's really, it's annoying. And with fiber optic and, I love the graphic that you showed, it's kind of like looking at the size of the earth to the size of the sun. It's that big of a difference, that order of magnitude difference in how fast it can be. And my son has looked at the data rates, and there are times we're getting like
This is it. This is
three or four megabits per second. 3 or 4.
This was the
It's like
the
that
one
low.
the one
Like
that you had.
that's DSL level, and it's just annoying that I'm paying $80 a month for broadband that I'm supposed to at least get 10, I think. I forget what I'm supposed to get. But that it's down to 2 or 3.
Well, no, this is, we can go back to cost, but this is the one, what I was talking about earlier. So I don't remember what they're advertising for download, but it isn't 47.
Yeah.
And
Probably
talk about the upload, talk about the upload.
Yeah, so a couple of points here. So this is speed tests. M-Labs is in Washington, D.C., and that's it's kind of a little think tank, but they work with Google to capture every speed test that anybody runs. Now, granted, when you run a speed test, you're probably irritated, right? I mean, it's probably not working right. So there is that level of bias in the data, because when people run it, it's probably in the evening when everybody's home and on their connection. And both the telephone and the cable is a shared network, so your neighbors are impacting what you're doing. What we're talking about as a committee is a non-shared network, so everybody's got their own connection into the switch, so it's just a different experience. So download and upload. Download is when I'm pulling information to my computer. Upload is when I'm pushing it out to the world. So if you're on a Zoom call, then you're going to be doing both, right? You're going to be sending some information out, and you're going to be bringing some information down. The nature of coaxial cable is that it will never be symmetrical. It's just designed to be asymmetrical, which means you're going to get a better download than you're going to get upload. Uploads become much more important as people have been working from home and doing more across this connection. So what we're showing here is the average from the M-Lab data, we ran this I think for 12 months, is that the average was 47, so just under 50, and then the upload of basically 7. And so I think a lot of people are probably on a 100 by 10 package. So why are they not getting 100? It's a shared network. It depends what your neighbors are doing.
And we just talk a lot, one of the things the committee pointed out is most people don't need that much upload, but if people are doing a lot of like video editing or file sharing, if you have a business that's showing like x-rays and things like that, then you really do need pretty high upload speeds. You might not need it as your normal, to stream Netflix at night or whatever, but you need it, particularly businesses need it.
I would assume that the reason that is so asymmetrical is that cable was designed for people to receive a signal, not send
TV
one.
signal.
A one-way signal, right? Yep.
Exactly.
So we're going to move on
I'm
to
assuming
kind of
that's-
like what the committee's done and what the recommendations are, but I do want to pause right here. Because we talked about numbers and things like that, so I just want to see if there's questions or comments on that. Go ahead.
The municipal light plant, so-called, how does that fit into this? What is that compared to this? I looked at the light plant and did my research on it. It's infrastructure. This is infrastructure. Where does one begin at the other end, or is it duplicative?
You skipped ahead.
Different going on here?
Yeah, it's relevant for this. Do you want me to talk
Yeah, go
about it
ahead.
right now? So, cities and towns in Massachusetts are explicitly allowed to build this infrastructure under the municipal light plant statute. So you can argue about 18 to 20 states across the U.S. where cities and towns are not allowed to build this infrastructure. And as you can imagine, there's been a massive lobbying effort, an ongoing lobbying effort, to stop cities and towns from building this infrastructure, because that's the logical competitor, right? The logical competitor to the existing incumbents would be cities and towns that start to treat this like a utility, because it is essential. And so, to this date, they've been successful in 18 to 20. Some of the states have overturned it. But in Massachusetts, the state has explicitly said cities and towns can build this infrastructure. They can actually function as an ISP if they want to. And it's under the municipal light plant law or statute. There's also been rulings, is it DLS? I'm trying to make sure. It's under the revenue.
I think it's DLS, yeah.
Yeah, DLS has issued a number of memorandums saying you can also do it as an enterprise fund. And that's some of the future work to be done is, there's a process, which you're in the middle of, to establish a municipal light plant. But we want to make sure that it's the right governance vehicle. So we will look further at enterprise fund as, just so you can compare and contrast.
If this would be the moment, I should have said, Jeff is here from Utah. So he came all the way from Utah just for this meeting. So he doesn't only deal in Massachusetts.
Strangely, our busy markets are California, Michigan, New York, and Massachusetts. Those are our, so fortunately we have airplanes.
And remote work and fiber.
We will light up the first municipal network in the state of New York on the 29th.
Nice.
Congratulations.
Nice.
And then locally, you've been working with Fairhaven, or Fairhaven has been setting up a
Working
system
with New
such as.
Bedford, Fairhaven, we have 12 projects in Massachusetts. And Fairhaven, New Bedford, too.
Okay.
All right, so completed work. This is stuff pre-me. So I started working with the committee in this year, in probably the second quarter. So last year there was a survey done. There's been work on sections of town. If it's a phased implementation, what would the sort of the carving up of the towns, assuming it didn't all happen at one time, how would it happen sequentially? A fiber backbone. This is Keith's project from the center of town out to various town buildings. Is that completed?
So the fiber has been run from, basically from Route 6 all the way down to the point. So we have fiber run, it's completely run between. They've run into all the town buildings, all the town sites. They've connectorized it. They're right now in the process of finalizing the last of the light scans to make sure all the fiber is good. And then they'll officially turn it over to us, and then I'll be able to start connecting up the town buildings to the new network. So that's coming along very nicely. Yep.
That one was delayed quite a bit by supply chain issues.
Supply chain issues, unfortunately,
COVID.
it held back a lot of the initial fiber manufacturing. So they're just starting to catch up, but they're still quite a few months behind in the manufacturing process. So in addition to running the fiber backbone, we looked at the design of the network, knowing that it was potentially a backbone. We put enough fiber in there to support future development. We looked at what that would involve. That would involve running additional fiber rings throughout several sections of the town to create these community type rings, and from those rings you would then run into what they would consider like the last mile to to the home and everything. So based on our initial town work design, we looked at, like I said, expanding those rings, and we were actually able to get some grants, and we were able to start construction of 2 of those fiber rings using those grants. So that work will start probably in the February timeframe. Those two of the 6 fiber rings there. So we are making very good progress as far as the town sites and setting us up for success in the future here. So.
And I just want to say we are exceptionally well served with Keith and with David, who's on the Google Meet, and with Entry Point for identifying the grant opportunities and then jumping through all the hoops that required for the grant writing. So we've really benefited from. So thank you, Keith and David, for that.
Sure. One of the other things that we did was, as part of the committee process, we created a high-level engineering drawing that allowed us to help with the identifying the costs associated with it, because it gives you preliminary information on fiber counts, on networking equipment, all of that, everything that's needed, all the pedestals, poles, connections, and that allowed us to come up with the engineering estimate costs going forward. So So that all gives us good, good information to be able to move forward with.
All right, so next steps. And we're willing, whether it's one-on-one, if you want a deeper dive on all this information, you've got the report, but if you want a one-on-one, you've got Q&A, we're happy to set that up and work through that. For next steps, we've got this list here. One is to clarify how the phased implementation, what that would look like. The key things I would say are ownership, structure, governance, and whether you're going to do open access or single ISP. So the single ISP is that you compete at the infrastructure layer. Open access is that it's many ISPs in one infrastructure. Those are the three primary decisions. What will the ownership relationship be between the town or the municipal light plan that's an agent of the town? What would the governance model be, and kind of finalize? I think the committee's recommending open access, but I think that needs to be finalized. So those are the three primary things. And then from there you would go into a set of RFPs. You would do an RFP for, if you do open access, you would select a vendor for that. You would select an engineering firm. We've got a high-level design, but you've got to have a construction-ready design. And then eventually you would probably do an RFP for your construction partner. So those are primary steps as you go forward to an actual plan. And the last one we've got there is the community engagement. That's the most important effort. You would want to be able to talk to everybody in the town. There will be a lot of misinformation, a lack of understanding, or a lack of what's really happening. And so the community engagement piece becomes the primary thing if you decide to advance this project.
And that goes to the take rate that we talked about earlier. So that's why community engagement is so important, that you want to be able to have more people, sign up for something like this, so you can reduce the overall cost to everybody.
When we're looking at the phasing, this is why it really needs a little bit more work, is do you say, okay, these are the loops that make sense, and whichever one gives us, an X amount of take rate first, that's the next one we'll build? Or how do you sequence them so that you're fair? Some of the grant funding is coming from some kind of affordable housing or some kind of lower income, some kind of economic factors, which is kind of helping, particularly up kind of in the north end a little bit. So we would continue to look for areas like that. But it's that, how do you get that take rate to be high enough that we can ensure that it's going to be pretty viable? And then, what order do you do them in?
As a resident of the north end, I can tell you, all of my neighbors would jump at the chance to have anyone else but Charter. Honestly and truly, it's unbelievable how bad the service is, and how, and not just they're not talking about downloadable service. I'm talking call up and try to get a human on the phone to solve your problem. Nearly impossible. Takes 3 or 4 visits. You got to wait all day for someone to show up. Which we can't all do, because myself and my wife are both self-employed. So and I feel that it's a higher density population there, and it would be a smaller amount of infrastructure. You need to get a lot of return on that investment really quickly, because you're going to have more subscribers there rather than the spread out southern end of town, which it could be a quarter mile between subscribers, at certain points. But I'm just, and I haven't, not looking at any of the numbers, just looking at it from 30,000 feet. That seems like it would be, plus the Route 6 corridor with other businesses.
Yeah.
There would be, some of them do have access to Fios now. I think they would jump at the chance to have access to a provider that wasn't Verizon or Charter.
So you talk about, before we keep talking about next steps, let's just talk about the couple of other slides that you have in here.
Yeah, so there's obviously a lot of federal, there's 65 billion has been allocated to broadband. Of that, 42 billion will start to get released next year. It is, there's a big lobbying effort to control they influence where that money goes. And so they're trying to allocate it to miles instead of people, meaning they're trying to get it out to the most remote parts of the US because that's not where they do business. So there's a lot of money that will flow. Interestingly, there's a lot of Wall Street money moving into this space. They figured out that fiber is a good long-term asset to invest in. It's a form of real estate in a sense, meaning it's rent-seeking, money comes in every month, and
Yeah, it will always have real value.
And David asked us to correct this when we didn't, sorry, David. So the project pencils without the grants, even if we don't get any grants, is still, the project still makes sense. Those numbers that we had before are all still the numbers, but what grants would do is reduce the cost overall. And we think there's gonna be a lot of grant money, or we know there's gonna be a lot of grant money out there, so we wanna make sure we're pursuing.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing for Westport, in Westport's favor, is that we've started, right? We have this backbone in place. I mean, it shows that we've made an effort. We're well
investment.
ahead of people who haven't even, who are just thinking about it now. So, yeah, to them, to the people who are providing grants, they look at that and say, well, they've already made progress on this. This is good. They know how to continue. So they know the money's going to be put to good use. So.
And props to you for, getting on us about this. Really, because if it wasn't for
Years
you,
ago.
many years ago saying, hey, we should really look at this, we wouldn't be here right now. And we are in that position, I feel, very much because, people such as yourself have really, given us good advice on where to go in this story,
You're welcome. Thank you.
And then this was your last slide.
Yeah, it's just the kinds of activities that would be involved in the community engagement phase. Ultimately, your goal is to talk to everybody, to give everybody an opportunity one-on-one to learn about this project. And so we would need to fund that effort. That's the kind of thing where money may go out to fund that, but would come back in the overall financial plan of the network. Questions, I guess.
If there's anything you guys can have ready or you want to present, especially to the north end, like in January, we'll be having an infrastructure meeting, forum, with town meeting after the holidays where everybody's stuck in the house anyways. We find we get a better attendance. So if you have anything you want to add to it or jump in, make it part of the presentation.
Well, so I think one of the things to know is, so the Entry Point, we had a contract with Entry Point to create the plan that you got, so the big plan that we got, and they've been very helpful in the Internet Advisory Committee, work very closely with them. But your contract is up, right? And like you still have a phone, But where Entry Point was kind of leading this before, we need to decide how we are going to take this forward. Like, do we use the same Internet Advisory Committee and kind of task them with looking at these next steps? Do we, engage somebody? Like how do we go about the next piece of it, I guess?
Well, like I said, if you need help with that, Jim is involved with the infrastructure committee anyway, so however we need to go forward. Just still be nice to get outreach and get public input, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think we do need public input. So I'm going to recommend that we put this presentation on, and probably the plan too. So the digital master plan can go on the website. This presentation can go on the website. But we really do need to think about if there's work we need to do for town meeting, what decisions do we have to make leading up into town meeting? Because if we are going to go for the municipal light plant approach, which I believe everybody on the committee is leaning towards, yes, we think we should do that, unless the lawyers tell us an enterprise account makes more sense, right? That municipal light plant would need to be on the ballot, or would be on the town meeting warrant. And then the other thing is, I'm pretty sure we represent this, but I just want to make sure. One of the decisions we made was that we didn't want the town to fund this. So we took that off, because another way we talked about an enterprise fund, we talked about a municipal light plant. The other thing you could do is just go out for bonding and just treat it like we just treated the school, right? So you don't have to do it that way. We took that off the table right away. So I don't think any of you guys are going to arm wrestle me for, yes, the town taxpayers should pay for this, but we did take that off the table, but that is still an option.
The government money that's out there, the billions, does that have to be, can that be through a contract Could the contractors get the money direct, or do you have to be sponsored by towns to get the money? Do we have to go after it, or can you guys apply for it?
Private companies will get a lot of it. Where they're really making mistakes is, many cities and towns are so hungry for fiber that they'll just reallocate that money without any guarantees. And so, we broke down $34 for infrastructure, $21 for M&O, $10 for ISP. They're not taking that 34, even though the bonds or the federal grants are paying for that 34, they're just rolling that into profit. And so it is important that you think through the ownership piece and that you maintain. The other thing on this model, once that infrastructure line item is paid off, it goes away, like other utilities, right? So if you buy a new home, you immediately pay for your electrical hookup or whatever your hookups are. So it's treated like a utility. So then you're left with essentially $35 for 1,000 by 1,000 connectivity. That's just a utility concept. So ownership matters a lot, and maintaining some control.
And one of the other things that the committee kind of assumed is that we did not want to be, in fact, running a town department called, maintaining the cable infrastructure, that we would outsource that to a provider so that the governance structure we're not going to have a whole bunch of town employees that have trucks that are going to go out and fix the wire when somebody smashes it with a telephone pole or smashes the pole. We're going to have a contract with an organization to do that because we didn't want to create a lot of new employees. We didn't want to create new tax dollars. We wanted to really be self-sufficient.
That was good.
And you see that internet is a self-sustaining industry. So there's no reason that we couldn't have that. And again, as I said, using private contractors that administer that. But we get to set the rules. These are the rules. If you want to provide here, you have to live by these rules. And you can't gouge, you can't price gouge, you can't do, we can actually set the ground rules so that the competition is fair and equitable, but that it doesn't put profit over service, which is what we're experiencing now. It's profit over service, and that's not where we want to go.
The emergence of non-profit ISPs because of what's happened, which is an interesting concept. So to do that, you'll need to turn on.
Another thing we didn't really talk about in this presentation, but one of the things that came up was this idea that is high-speed internet access a luxury good or is it an essential service? And we kind of went on the premise like, no, it is essential. So that, again, we were talking earlier about maybe there's ways that you need to make it more affordable for certain types of people or something like that. But if we had control over the governance, we would have some control over whether we wanted to do things like that. David, I know you've been there. Did you have anything you wanted to talk about?
I just wanted to say I really appreciate this thing. I think it's gone very well. This might even be a profitable town-owned business. Think of that.
There's no reason it can't be.
That's a good sell, David.
So I think that what I would like to do is suggest that the Internet Advisory Committee continue taking the next kind of layer at things like this. But if we know people we have some really pretty good people on that committee. We have Renee Kaufman, who's had a lot of experience like this. We have Paul Jonkus, who works exactly in this area.
Yep.
So I think we have a really good team, and David, of course.
And Sean.
But so think about whether there are other people that we need to include or should be reaching out to, and whether one of you all want to take over or something like that. So I'll be thinking about who should do that. But my recommendation would be just kind of start looking at the next steps, particularly anything we got to do leading up to town meeting. Have the current Internet Advisory Committees keep chasing that. But I'm welcome to other. Go ahead, David. Go ahead.
You just might want to invite anybody who's really interested in this to contact you or Paula about joining the committee.
Yeah, I think we welcome some additional participants. Go ahead, Keith.
Just the one, we did mention about grants, even though this project shows well, even without grants. I think grants are going to help us even much further. There's several grants that are out there now. There's some 50-50 grants where, 50% loan, 50% actual grant. There's some 75-25 where, you know, the requester has to put up 25 and the grant provides a 75. So there's some 100% grants. I mean, obviously those are the most ideal, but they become much more difficult. So there's different types of grants that are out there, like I said, and we should consider, start considering some of those others too. And, do we want to say, hey, we'll take a loan and, get a grant at the same time? So that could significantly reduce your infrastructure costs while, getting a grant, to help support that. So there's a lot of, like I said, a lot of grants, more grants are going to be coming out. So we should definitely be taking advantage of all those. And I think some of those are going to be, there's going to be some effort involved with those. So we just got to keep that in mind.
I think also we may remind the public, if it does come to a point where we have to bond out a portion of it or whatever, because we can't get it all grant money, remind them that this is going to be paid for by the fees that people pay in. It's not going to be on your tax rolls. It's not going to add to the, exactly.
Not a debt exclusion.
It's not going to be not excluded debt or excluded debt or whatever it is. It's not going to, because it's going to be revenue neutral. So, or it might be revenue positive actually. So, that, which our town desperately needs more revenue.
You would think that it would then go back into lowering the cost to the service, right? But that would be something your governance team would then have to look at, right? Go ahead, David.
I'd like to mention that Keith and I are already a first-rate grant application writing team. We got $240,000 for the 2 northern loops, and we're prepared to go ahead with any more grant applications on any opportunities that arise. So we're ready to go.
Good, we challenge you to double it, David.
Okay, all right.
And Entry Point has been really good at kind of.
How about quadruple it?
I like your style, David.
Appreciate it.
And Entry Point has done a good job of kind of pointing us in directions and making some connections and things like that. So we'll look where there's an opportunity for you to help us as we go forward. But.
There's a seminar on Wednesday, David. I'll send you an email.
There you go.
All right, anything else on this before you move on?
I
Thank
already
you.
know about it.
You already know, you're already going. Thank you very much for coming. We're glad to see you here. Thank you, Keith.
You're very welcome.
Have a good night, David.
Good night.
Thanks, David. I'm going to hang up on you. Do you want to listen to the rest of the meeting, or are we hanging up on you?
Mr. Cole, do you want us to leave you on speakerphone, or do you want to break up?
We're staying on. My partner is still involved in later stages of the meeting.
Okay, all right. So we won't hang up on you.
Okay.
Ms. Slade.
So now we are back to the agenda that Shauna has been skipping around on. So let's just make sure we did 3A and B. Let's pause on the budget discussion. Let's get anything else out of the way here. 5B. The request from Chris Gonzalez, the highway surveyor, for an increase in private snow plowing and sanding rates. You wanna?
While he's looking at it, if the board hasn't seen it already, almost every town is offering big incentives this year, even the little towns. It's really crazy out there, and I think it's something we gotta do. I'll let Jim.
I drive by a sign in Tiverton almost every day now.
Christian's offering $1,000 to sign on, plus these rates.
So I think that's it, right? The rates have become more and more competitive over the last couple of years. Chris, the highway department last year had a difficult time getting plow drivers for the rates that we were paying. Every community that I'm aware of is considering going up if they haven't gone up already. I don't think it's an option. I think it's a necessity at this point. We have a very small staff, or short-staffed highway department. We have limited plow drivers.
Can we just pause for a moment? How short-staffed we are? We have like 5 employees. How many employees do we have?
I think it's 5.
We have
5, and one's out right now. Yes.
So I want to.
15 a few years ago.
We used to have 15 people in the highway department.
29 at one point. We were 28.
Okay, however many we used to have. We used to have a lot, and we have one of the highest number of road miles in Massachusetts.
Right.
We currently have 4 in the highway department on the ground working every day. We have open positions in the highway department. We're hearing a lot on social media about a pothole or the road construction is contracted out, so most of the road construction that you're seeing right now, that's contracted out. But still, our highway department has to kind of oversee that and do the local control of these things. But I
They're on
cannot
site
state
every
enough.
day.
We have 5 people in the highway department. So this is why some of these things are taking longer. And this is why we have to hire out for snow plows, because 4 people cannot plow out the town of Westport in any kind of reasonable time
170
frame.
miles of road.
How many is it?
170 miles.
It's like 170 road miles, so. All right, so you're recommending an increase in the plowing and sanding rates from $60 an hour to $80 an hour for a pickup, from 90 to 110 for a
Six-wheeler.
Up to $90 for 6-wheeler and up to $110 for a 10-wheeler. And then the front end loader would be $135. I don't have their existing rates for those 3 right now.
We can do that. That doesn't mean have to be a public meeting, because we set that, correct?
We set that, yes. It's not a fee. It's,
Right.
yeah.
You gonna move it, Brian?
Yeah, I'll move it.
I'll second it.
And so this one is one that we are allowed to deficit spend if it should come up. But it is money you have to pay at the end of the day, and we usually pay it out of free cash if we
I
have to.
haven't
so.
seen people complain about this yet, because they're all called, this is probably the most, besides the beach, this is probably the most calls we get in the winter.
We're probably benefiting quite a bit from a very mild winter so far.
Yeah. Thank God.
Just to be clear, even with these rates, it's going to be difficult to get plow
Yeah.
drivers on.
I agree.
And also, I'll tell you, just talking to Chris, there were plow drivers who just deserted them in the middle of the storm and went and did their own private work, and then came back to do the public roads after. My road was one of the victims of that, and Chris, rather nicely, sent somebody down to plow, because you couldn't even get up my road, and I have 3 4-wheel drive vehicles, and not one of them could get up my road, and it's only about a 3% incline. It was so bad, and he actually sent someone to clear it within an hour, and had apologized profusely because the guy had just driven off and gone to do his own private stuff and was supposed to be plowing the roads. And so this is the kind of stuff you get when you pay nothing for it, you know?
All right, so we have a motion and a second to increase the rates. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So I'm skipping the budget. I don't know why I'm like got a mental block. So then 5F. 5F is a request to accept donations to the Council on Aging, $175. We have Ralph Urban donation for best use, $25. Anonymous for tech help, $5. Outreach, $20. Barbara Norton, best use, $50. Pam and Eric Diamond in memory of Muriel Peters, totaling $275.
Move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. H, request to approve use of perpetual care funds to construct this is why Betty wanted to be there. Request to approve the use of perpetual care funds to construct toilet facilities and septic system at the cemetery office. You want to tell us about this one, Jim?
Sure. So we're under, I guess, orders or directed to provide facilities at the transfer station as well as the cemetery. We have a portable unit there right now, but we're paying monthly on it. It's expensive. This facility is going to be here for a long time. We really want to get a permanent facility at the garage in the cemetery. We had priced out with contractors, and we're looking in excess of about $90,000 for the plumbing, electrical, the carpentry work, and the septic system. We contacted Diamond, and Diamond's been great. They've been unbelievable. They came right down, they looked at it, they said this is a project they'd like to take on. So they're willing to do the plumbing, electrical, and carpentry work for about $15,000, and it's essentially just materials, plumbing fixtures, the wall board, the painting, the tile floor, and so forth. They've done work beyond that, even while they've been down there. They've done some small engine repair work. They helped out with the Veterans Memorial, Monument Memorial last week. They remulched that area, weeded it. So it's a good project for Diamond. It's a great fit for us. I mean, we're looking in the savings of $40,000 to $50,000 just with the Diamond help. They're also looking maybe to do some additional work there too. Some shingling needs to be done on the side of the building, and if they have time, they've agreed to do that as well. So I think it's a great fit for the town. It's a great fit for Diamond. I had asked that we use perpetual care money to fund that. I don't really have another funding option to do it. So, and I think it's a good use of those funds.
And we don't need to go to town meeting to expend them because it has to do with improvement of the cemetery facility, because those bathrooms will also be able to be used by the public when,
They could if needed, yes.
if needed
Yeah.
during
They'll
that
be handicap
service.
accessible, you know.
Yeah, so, and yeah, they have to be ADA accessible just because that's the law. So I'm gonna move that.
Second.
All right, so let's discuss. So the request is to approve the use of perpetual fair funds of up to $40,000
Yep.
for this project that you just described.
Yep.
I know I would like to hear from Betty if she has any comments or on this topic.
I actually am here.
Do you have any comments?
Yes, I do approve this. I think it's very important to understand how important the cemetery workers are to our goals to maintain our cemeteries. And I think that it's about time that they have this kind of facility. I've worried about it a long time. So I certainly do approve this. Thank you very much for asking me.
You're our expert, Betty. Is there any discussion?
But you said 40,000,
Yep.
it's not mentioning the 40,000.
Sorry, in Jim's recommendation, so is the request, in Jim's recommendation, he's got the request of use of up to 40,000 of perpetual funds. It's on the one that with the yellow highlights.
And that was
I
my
don't think-
motion.
Above them.
Just so the public knows too, Jim had mentioned the 20,000 for Diamond, but 20K is for the tight tank.
Yeah, so 20,000 in diamond and materials, 20,000 for the tight tank. We're getting labor from the exceptionally helpful crew over there at Diamond. Do you have anything else? Dick?
No, I see it now.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous.
Just one more thing on that.
Yeah.
I mean, the cemetery workers have been doing a nice job over there. Ron Port has been, in the past they have as well, but Ron Port, he's been there probably 4 months now, and he's done an exceptional job. I mean, just getting the Diamond kids involved. And
I was gonna say Diamond cut it too, they told me at the Veterans Thing.
yes.
Okay.
They've been, yep, so they've been great working with those guys.
Good, thank you to our cemetery crew.
And we did approve the Diamond ballot.
The diamond
That's part of the
vote
budget
did not
discussion.
pass.
Did not pass.
No,
Oh,
no.
that's,
Surprise.
unfortunate.
Yeah, we'll definitely need to talk about that.
Benny's probably on Jay too.
Yeah, so let's skip to J because this is a musical agenda tonight. J is request funding from the Community Preservation Committee for upgrades to the Town Hall electrical system and exterior preservation and repairs, requesting up to $150,000 for electrical upgrades and $115,000 for exterior repairs, painting, concrete, etc. Do you want to tell us about that?
Sure, so I went before the Preservation Committee last Thursday just to kind of present this to them to see if it was an approvable project or a project that they would support. And it seems that it is. And then the reason for it is we're looking at upgrading the HVAC system here at Town Hall. We've applied for a $500,000 grant from Green Communities. We've put in for an additional $119,000 of energy incentives from the utility company, and I think there's another $20,000 of some type of rebates from the utility company as well. So we're looking at about $628,000 of grants and rebates. We would be required to put a matching of 25% of the $500,000, which is $125,000. And the match would essentially be the upgrade to the electrical system. So we'd have to upgrade the service, and at the same time, we wanted to upgrade the service throughout the building. If you look around, I mean, we have 2 prong outlets that are grounded. We have extension cords running in almost every room, so it's something that needs to be done. So that would be roughly anywhere from $125,000 to $150,000, and then an additional $115,000 we were looking at. And I got to work on this price a little bit more just to confirm it, but essentially just the outside, the painting, fixing up the woodwork, cleaning up the exterior of this building. And we got some, I didn't realize how much woodwork there was up on top of the roof there with the, called the steeple.
Cold
Yes, and the windows that are up there, but it needs to be done. We're at the point now where we just took out the AC unit over here, and when we did that, the sill was all rotted out, so the water was getting behind the bricks. So we're at the point now where it needs to get fixed, otherwise we're going to, the expense is going to be substantially more in the future. So if we could, I'm looking just to get support for this from the Board of Selectmen, and if we do, then we'll present it at the public meeting with the Community Preservation Group next month, and present at the town meeting and see if we can get funding. The other option would be to go before the Capital Improvement Planning Committee and see if we can get some funding there, but this is a preservation type of project, and it would be great if we could use those funds.
So you need a motion to move forward with that initiative?
Yes.
So this is the move forward with the request to the CPC?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Betty, did you have anything on that?
Yes, I would like to say something. In general, we really feel that it's very important that CPA protects the historical buildings in Westport. And in general, I felt that there was an agreement that this could go forward. We are still looking at the issue of the possibility of selling these buildings if we get an agreement that the town buildings will move. And so I'm working with others on looking at what we can do to preserve the buildings historically in the sense of not having them torn down, etc. So we really will be coming before the Board of Selectmen eventually, if you decide to sell these buildings, to find a way to protect them. And one example that is in Newton is that there's a requirement that the Historical Commission at Newton have some important role in determining whether a building could be torn down or what can be done on the exterior. So I just wanted you to know that we are really concerned about that. And we do want to support the town. We have throughout, I think, the history of the CPC doing so. So I want you to know that we are looking into that now. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. Anything else on the motion to make the request?
This has got to do with town hall. I think this building will be the toughest to try to sell or knock down, if you will. I think maybe we've got the investments here, we've got the setups here, we've got the elevator here. I think the annex might be, I'm sure people want the annex too because it'd be a school, but you know, I think that one makes more sense if we were going to get rid of the building. It would probably be that one we'd be having the tussle with, if you will. So I think this building makes a lot more sense to put money in a nutshell.
And we wouldn't have to sell this building if we stopped using it. We could just lease it to someone.
Well, you know, there's a highway up here too. I mean, there's all kinds of options.
There's a lot of options.
Yep.
And again, we shouldn't be divesting ourselves of assets.
True.
So we're making the request to the CPC. It sounds like they're going to do a little bit of work just to kind of see if they need to, provisions or something to put on there to kind of protect the historic side. Is there any other comment on that one? All in favor? Aye. That's unanimous. Do you guys have anything else before we move on?
Did we do 2I?
No, we didn't.
Betty, do you need anything else before we move on? I'm going to turn it down.
Sounds fine.
Okay,
Thank you, guys.
Good night.
Thank you.
So 5I, my computer died, so I don't have my backup battery. So now you just have to go on your paper. So 5I is approve a request to the Finance Committee for reserve fund authorization to purchase a truck for town hall maintenance. Jim, do you want to talk about this one?
Sure. The maintenance vehicle that the maintenance worker here at the town hall uses is no longer roadworthy, so we looked to replace the brakes on it, they put it up on the lift, and they said, no, this is done. So we are going to need a replacement vehicle at some point. He's using the electric car right now. He does not have a vehicle that he can use himself personally. We've been kind of working with the cemetery group a little bit to use their truck on occasion. And the highway department has filled in a little bit where needed, but you know, it's just everyday work. You know, he's moving trash from the annex down to the land transfer station. He's moving stuff from this building to the next. We had the voting machines that had to go up to the Our Lady of Grace and to the school last week, and we didn't have a vehicle to transport him in. So at some point, he's going to need some type of truck. I kind of wanted to just bring it to your attention that there's a need for it, and whether we go to the Finance Committee at this point or we do it as a capital improvement project. we're gonna need a truck.
The only thing I was thinking of, Jim, it wouldn't make sense for a hand-me-down for the highway and have highway do it, because they do the plowing and everything, get them more rugged.
Yeah, you know, I've asked them, they don't have a vehicle right now to step down. I've checked with the fire department, they don't. They may have a vehicle if these other trucks come in. They have the old Ford Excursion, which is a big gas guzzling vehicle. That may
Well,
have
plus you don't want to put trash.
But it's a 250,
Yeah.
so it's a big
250
frame.
frame, yeah.
You know, he had the old, I don't know, it was like an old Explorer, or it was an old one anyway.
I'm not saying that old, I'm saying maybe Chris, a supervised vehicle or something would be better for that and get something with a plow and stuff, you know.
That we can do as well. I think at this point, I just wanted to bring it to your attention.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to do something shortly. We don't have to do it tonight, but we'll have to do it tonight.
Since I've been here, the maintenance people for town hall have been asking for a decent vehicle, and they just keep getting handed, you know, these vehicles with 200,000+ miles on them, you know, from the 90s, and they never seem to have anything. And, you know, you get to a certain point of diminishing returns with an older vehicle like that, that you just, you know, even if we were to purchase something that was used but newer, less than 100,000 miles on it, it would be much better than what they end up getting from that, because what they're gonna get from the highway department is a truck that's been plowed its whole life, basically, you know, every winter for the last however many years it's been. If any of you are familiar with trucks that plow, you don't buy them. Nobody buys it. You find out that a truck has a plow on it, you don't want it. Because everything and every part on it, every suspension part, it's going to be rusted. It's going to be, it's done. It's done. So I think this has come up every year that I've been on this board. That's almost 9 years now, and even the years in between when I wasn't on the board. So I think, you know, this is something we need to do this. I mean, we need to buy them a reliable vehicle that they can use to maintain the premises.
Madam Chair, if I could add to this, I think the Capital Improvements Planning Committee has seen this again and again. And at one time I had a demonstration, it was like the fumes were asphyxiating. I mean, it was demonstrated for me. So I mean, this clearly it's probably overdue. But what is the rationale for the reserve fund authorization from the Finance Committee as opposed to capital improvements?
Just timing. If we
Doesn't use
go
it now.
that route, the funding would be available if they approved it at that point.
Well, how much money do they have in that fund?
$109,000.
Well, yeah, I guess it's up to the Finance Committee, I suppose, for doing this.
Well, it's up to us to whether we're going to request it of the finance committee, and then it would be up to them to approve or not approve.
Oh, I see. Yeah, from my days in the Finance Committee, they might have that reserve fund earmarked for some other things. I have a suspicion. of why I said
If
that.
we're putting on my finance committee hat, I wouldn't approve a purchase like this 5 months into the fiscal year. That's gonna, what are you gonna put, $40,000 or more? I think it's too early to be going from the reserve fund. I think it should come from capital improvement. But also, I totally get it. Like, this is the way that you can get money in the middle of the cycle. So I don't hate it, but I'm not sure that it would be looked favorably upon the finance committee, but maybe we shouldn't be guessing what the finance committee would say.
Well, I think we should get their view on this and tell us if they do support it, if they have the money, and if they're not earmarking that money for something else, and I think that changes the tone of this.
So are you going to move that we recommend that it goes to the finance committee with us?
Are you moving that?
I will if he doesn't.
I would not be making a recommendation that we requested. I would say we seek the Finance Committee's, because it's their inquiry or whatever, because it's their money as to how they see this as a request, and does it make sense? Give us some advice.
Well, they make the ultimate decision whether or not they will release the funds. So, I mean, I'm just saying, why bother go through two processes?
Yeah, okay. So
Just send it over, get their recommendation, whether they approve it or not, and that's it. It's over and done with. And then if we have to go through CIPC in order to fund it later in the year, then we do it that way.
Except we're requesting. Here we're
Yes.
requesting.
Yes.
There's one thing about
That's the process.
agreed, that's the official process, but sometimes you're more likely to get a favorable answer if you have gotten input before the formal request, right?
Well, I
So
think-
I don't know, I mean,
I think as a board, and you don't share my experience on CIPC, but on CIP and Dick shares is my experience. Every single year, we've been requested that they get a decent vehicle. At one point, they were driving a 1994 Chevy pickup that the floorboards were so rotted through, you could see the road as you were driving.
Those are the ones that
I mean,
cause asphyxiation.
Yeah, and asphyxiating the driver. We have a history of it. We had one vehicle that the fire department owned several years ago that caught fire when the Dartmouth Fire Department borrowed it to move some furniture and burnt on the road because it was that old. It was like a 1984 vehicle. We hold on to these things forever, and it's New England. There's salt. They don't survive that long.
Next, you're gonna say we had a tanker that the axles fell off. Come on, Brian, that won't happen.
we drive the vehicles into the ground, there's no question
Literally.
about it.
So I guess I'd be okay if, I could feel the finance committee out a little bit and just bring this up at the next meeting or the meeting after official vote for the board if it looks like, I'm not sure if they've expended any of the money. I don't believe they have, but there are some other issues that are coming up. I know some of the accounts are running low on fuel, heating this year, so.
Yeah.
Either way, I don't mind going before the finance committee and just getting a general feeling if that's what the board so chooses.
No, I suggest that we bring this before the finance committee as an item for discussion and information and background, and then we might formalize a request. Yeah, it's a two-step process.
I would prefer that approach personally.
That's fine.
Makes sense.
All right, so we don't.
I did not move it. I was just said I would if.
All right, so we are not taking action on that item, but Jim is gonna go talk to them.
Okay.
All right, the budget discussion. So you mentioned it earlier, question 5 failed at the
How
ballot. I don't remember, but question 5 was funding the Diamond project with excluded debts. That failed. So now we still have to pay for the Diamond project. That is still in our budget that we are required to pay for. So that puts an additional burden on this year's budget. We think around $100,000 for the upcoming fiscal year budget, but it'll be more like $450, $500 in the next year after that budget.
As you explained in your video.
As I explained in my little video, but we did not do a very good job getting the word out, right? There was
I thought your video was good.
Brian, it lost by 350.
It lost by 350 votes.
Yeah.
So there's a total of roughly 7,000 votes on it, just over 7,000.
Yeah. So, and I think we just failed to communicate with the, there was an article, front page on the shorelines. I know we talked about it a few times, but there wasn't really a campaign about it or anything. So, I don't think people understood. They knew they were voting not to raise the taxes. I don't think they understood the implications that was going to have. So,
voting to shoot themselves in the foot.
So I think we
Instead.
do have, I think Jim has in his report, maybe we need to go to the ballot again. And when should we go for the ballot again? But that, so we do need to talk about that. I don't want to talk about that right at this moment, but, so that's a problem with the budget. It's a, what do we call that? A headwind. It is a headwind against the budget. I think that's the right word. Do you want to talk about the rest of the budget and how swimmingly that's going?
Yeah, so I just kind of want to bring the board up to date as to where it stands. The departments have submitted their budgets. All the town side departments, the school department usually comes in later. I've met with the majority of the departments. There's still a couple of smaller ones that I haven't met with yet to review their submittals. By December 19th, I will have a recommended budget for the Board of Selectmen. It doesn't look great, I can tell you that right now. Not as a surprise. On the town side, if we share the net revenue as we've done in the past, 54 split, 46 for the town, 54 with the school, we're looking at, $300,000 to $400,000 to split. That might go up 100, might go up 150, might go down 100 as we refine some of the revenue numbers going forward. But that 150,000 doesn't cover the negotiated pay increases for the town employees or the school department. and that's only a 2% increase. It's not a 5, 7, 8% increase, so it's minimum. So we're in a similar position to where we were last year. Last year, we made some cuts. Those have already been cut. We can't go back to those same cuts, so we would need some new cuts. Based on the initial proposals or the initial department submittals, which was set up to be negotiated pay raises and pretty much level funded unless there was a specific need like oil and gas and things where they could justify. And based on that, we're about $600,000 on the town side over budget. The school side, hearing from the superintendent, they're saying about $800,000 minimum, and that's just with the negotiated raises and contracts. So with the revenues, the school would essentially be level funded from last year. So last year they had $20,336,000 in the budget, and $300,000 was free cash. They would essentially be about $20,300,000 as we are right now. So they would have a level funded budget that wouldn't account for any of their raises, that wouldn't account for any increases in anything. So
Our $600K, that doesn't include Diamond, right? Or does include it?
it does include Diamond.
Does include
600.
400 for Diamond?
Well, this year it would be about 100, maybe 120. I think I budgeted 120 for it.
Okay.
So on our side, there's a few things that we can do to bring it down. There was one additional firefighter position in there, so that would have been new. So that obviously would be one that we'd be looking at to take out. Again, we have some unfilled positions at the highway department. We didn't fund those last year. We wouldn't be able to fund those again this year. The assistant animal control officer. In the past, we've had two. We've made it through this year with one. He's worked full-time plus overtime on weekends. It's been difficult, but that's probably would not be filled. The assistant building inspector, again, wouldn't be filled this year. I'm hoping to see some minor savings on hauling fees. We have a new employee over there that's getting certified with his Class B license. Is it Class B? I think it's Class B, which would allow him to drive the containers, the dumpsters, which would eliminate some of the hauling costs. We may be able to reduce the old high school expenditures. I'm hoping by about $50,000. We're still going through those costs right now. They had put in, the assessor had put in $40,000 for the reval. We may be able, I know we can move that over to a warrant article and use free cash. Ideally, it would be nice to include that in the operating budget as we go forward, but it's something that we could move off to the side. The library increased two of its positions this past year, and there was some question whether or not they'd be able to fund that out of their own budget going forward or from their own funds. There's a possibility that we could pay off some of our non-excluded debt, like the campground we owe roughly $600,000 on. If we paid that off with free cash, that would free up about $100,000 in the operating budget. It would also save us about $20,000 to $30,000 in interest every year or two. So, that's something that we want to consider. I had budgeted, I think, $150 for the OPEB. Every year we end up kind of cutting that down a little bit. At some point, we're going to have to bite the bullet and fund that fully, but that might be some place where we can cut a bit. But long-term, these are short-term solutions. This gets us through a year, maybe half a year. Long-term, you get two options. You got an override option, or you have to cut salaries. Those are the only two options you have. Again, the Diamond vote, that'll add about $120,000. I think at some point we're going to have to put that back on the ballot. And, maybe I took that for granted as well. I saw the Bristol Aggie kind of went through, and we did something similar to that a couple of years ago, and it didn't seem to be an issue. I kind of hoping the same with Diamond. But Diamond's a large project. That's something that should be funded with excluded debt. It's not typically funded with non-excluded. So I think if we can get that message out there, I think that's something that we could move over in the future.
Jim, how about ARPA? Is there any money left in there that we can do magic with?
Yeah, so there is some ARPA, this Bristol County ARPA. Bristol County's been very difficult on what they've allowed communities to spend that money on. We just submitted, and I think my report we submitted for three fire department vehicles, 2 passenger vehicles for the school department, a zoning study, and they approved the zoning study because we could tie that into infrastructure. They tentatively, or at least sent the 2 passenger vans for the school to level 2. We were able to tie that into, it's a kind of a different funding category, almost like a health type issue, where it's going to provide additional services for the students to allow them to get the extracurricular activities and so forth. But the 5 vehicles, they denied the first time. We've resubmitted it with some additional wording. So yes, there's funding there, but it's not as accessible as.
Well, the reason I'm asking it is because the inflation hitting us at the same time. I mean,
Yep.
it's even worse to try to get an override right now until the economy flips. So just trying to see what the options are.
Our revenues from this past year were good. Our main, this is local receipts I'm talking about, but our main local receipts is excise tax on vehicles. So, as the economy gets tight, that drops 10-15%, that's $150,000, $200,000, actually more than that in a year. I looked at the first quarter excise tax for this year as opposed to last year. We're already down about $130,000.
No new cars to buy out there.
It's that. It could also be that depends on the timing of when the bills were paid. If the bills run out late, they pay late, it goes to the next fiscal year, so that could be it. We'll have a better idea after the next quarter. But overall revenues from last year were decent. Free cash this year we're hoping is going to be good. I think it's going to be very good. But that's one-time funding again, and it doesn't help us at short term. It helps us short term, it doesn't help us long term.
The other thing we've got to think about long term too is if the guy behind you might know more than we know on that is the housing market. The prices start coming down, then the fees from that area might hurt us a little bit. So
we're looking at building permit fees. That's one that could go down. We did well through COVID. There were a lot of small building permits that were taken out, just people doing work on their homes, so we saw a bump. But we don't have any big subdivisions right here in town. They've all built out. We don't have any new developments, big developments on the books, commercial or residential. And a lot of the smaller stuff, as the economy gets tight, will tighten up as well. So
maybe I didn't make it clear too. I meant because of interest rates rising,
Yep.
not that our property values are diving.
So that's where we are. I hope to get something to the Finance Committee, at least the department submittals to them within the next week and a half, and we'll go from there.
So Jim is working on a balanced budget with the current information. So we're going to go through in detail on the 19th, you said, right? So our meeting on the 19th, just before Christmas.
Grant you Christmas?
We'll have the dire look at what that is. And then I think we're going to have to give Jim some direction on what else to cut. And I think it's going to be, I think we found anything that's not painful or as least painful as possible, but I think we're going to have to consider options that might be more painful. But we won't know that until we see that in front of us.
How about the free cash? I know it's not advised, and I know the FinCom members don't like it, but how about touching free cash too? Is that?
I mean, we've done it in the last couple of years. We've used free cash to supplement the budget. It's definitely possible.
All right, I just want to make sure it's not off the table because I like to bring it up. I don't want to surprise anybody. If we can have that option, that's all.
Yeah, I think so. The biggest, it sounds like it's going to be, we're still going to have to find a couple $100,000 of cuts because he mentioned a few other things like OPEB and paying off some short-term debt and stuff like that, but we're still going to have to find several $100,000 on our side, and that does not include, that's assuming that the school is flat, basically, to what they had.
I wish we had a running total of what we could expect the meals tax because of the great summer. We had great weather, the meals tax would probably be up, but they don't give us any estimate.
So we do.
We do have it?
And I'll get that to you for the next meeting.
Okay.
It is up, the meals tax is up and the rooms tax is up.
Yeah, the weights have been jammed.
We have marijuana now.
Yeah, but that's been slow. I see like a car coming out.
That's something that's also going to be coming before us soon because they've opened for the medical, but I don't know why we put in that they had to wait another 90 days to go to the recreational. That's just hurting us, and it's hurting them.
I don't think that's us that delayed that. I think that's.
That's
I don't think that's the town of Westport.
That's what we put in their host agreement, was that they were gonna have to wait another 90 days after they opened for medical to be able to open for recreational. And I think, we can waive that. And I think if we do, I mean, it may not be much, but any amount helps for this particular fiscal year. So.
All right, I'm missing a page on my agenda. So, all right, so that's the budget. It's pretty dire. But we'll have more specifically how dire it is on the 19th. So the town administrator reports, we talked about a lot of these already.
Yeah, a few of the, just the Title V regulations again. Mass DEP is looking to revise the Title V regulations requiring denitrification systems for communities such as ours that has a TMDL with nitrogen, or the town has to do a management plan, and that's probably where we're going to end up. I know Bob Daler from the Planning Board and Phil Weinberg from the Board of Health are working on a joint response for the public hearings. And we also resubmitted the letter that the Board of Selectmen, Board of Health and Planning Board had prepared a couple of months ago as part of the public hearing process. But it does look like it's going to go through.
I just want to pause on this one too, because this is bad news for people. These regulations, they are talking about every home that has a septic would have to be a D-Nite system within 5 years, every single one. So it's across the board. Everyone has to have a D-Nite system. So there is a process where the town can take some action to kind of show that we're getting this under control, and I think we have to. We owe it to the citizens of Westport to pursue this, but this is major and will affect every home in Westport. So please pay attention. David and Betty, did you have something on that? David and Betty, we can hear you.
So you don't think we're still going to be covered because we're working on infrastructure?
Well,
we're going to try to say that
Yeah, we had them in not very long ago, and with the health board, and we're in a very good position to take option 2, which is the management plan, where if we have a plan in place like sewer and Route 6, like requiring all the D-Nite systems for anything new and any upgrades, that we can then go into this 20-year management plan where we have 20 years to reduce our TMDL by, is it 75% reduction? I forget what the actual number was. But we have a certain number we have to reach within 20 years, and it wouldn't require everyone in town to get a D-Nite system. It would just, we would keep on the same track we're on now, and as long as we can reduce the loading in the river by the amount specified by the state over a 20-year period, then we don't have to do that. So that's the option we're pursuing, and we're in a very good position to pursue that option because we've already required the D-Nite systems on all new and repairs and in sensitive areas and things like that. So we're already, again, like we are on the cable, on the internet, the fiber optic network, because we're ahead of the curve. We'll probably fare a lot better than a lot of other coastal towns in Mass.
And then even if we went with the plan, there's still a cost to this. We did a target integrated water resource management plan a couple of years ago, and that was $150,000. And then there's a yearly cost, there's yearly reporting. So I don't see any funding coming to the town, so this could be anywhere from $40,000 up to $150,000 the first year to get the plan in place, and then an additional $25,000, maybe $25,000 a year just to manage it and to report.
So David has raised his hand. David Cole.
Okay, I want to agree with everything that Brian has just said. I think the town is well on its way to dealing with all of these issues, and they're just, the state's trying to catch up with us. So I think we just need to keep moving and doing that. And I'd like to step back one thing to your previous discussion. Our view is that we really need to focus on the override, and we're working very hard to do that. And I think if we can mobilize resources and effort and community engagement enough, we may be able to do that. And I think that will sort of supersede this effort to try to fund Diamond this year, and we can pay Diamond out of the override and then take it up next year. So, or later on. but I don't think there should be a big push to solve the diamond problem at the next town meeting. But I do think we're doing very well on meeting our obligations under the TMDL requirements, and we aren't very far away from meeting our TMDL requirements on the nitrogen. So we just need to keep going and doing the good things we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. I do think that, because we are not talked about putting an override plan on a ballot yet. So I think that if somebody has got proposals, or somebody has an initiative, or somebody wants input from the select board, then we really want to hear from people soon. So I know I can't mobilize a group like that, but I'm certainly willing to entertain anyone who wants to come and talk and engage when it's the right moment to engage with the select board.
We are mobilizing.
Good.
Well, there's
All
a
right.
group on, there's a group on this.
I know there's a group, but it's a private citizen
Yeah.
group that hasn't presented any kind of proposal to the town or for us to do anything yet.
That's
So,
true, that's
so we're still going on the line of work with what we have.
We're coming.
All right.
There.
You're welcome whenever you're here.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Jim.
Next one was Diamond. I think we discussed Diamond.
Yeah.
And again, at some point, we'll have to get it on a ballot. The old high school, try and go back and forth on, we talked about putting a referendum question on the next ballot. We may want to consider some type of survey instead of a ballot question. Just the wording on the ballot question, I think, if it's not simple, it's going to get complicated.
Yeah.
And, it may not be as useful as we want.
We've had some of those discussions. We need to maybe have a meeting this month and see when everybody's available for maybe not this month, but the beginning of just December, and within the next month, I should say, and maybe come up with ideas as to how we're going to handle that.
Okay. And I think as we go through the budget process, at least to me, it's becoming more apparent that we got to move on it one way or the other fairly quick. We just don't have the luxury to carry it on for an extended period of time. National opioid settlement. Earlier this year, we reached out and we participated with the other municipalities. And the towns will receive about 40% of the abatement funds that the state recovers. So they're showing about $82,000 total. I thought we were going to get this in different years, but we received the full check for the 5 years this week. So we received $83,000 from the opioid settlement. It's still kind of figuring out how we can use it. They may want us to use it for specific health-related or public safety type related issues. They're still working through that. Right now, they've suggested that we just put it aside and put it into the free cash for the following year. So that's where it is, but that may change over the next couple of months as they get further into it. The Bristol County ARPA funds, I think I mentioned this before, the Route 6 zoning study has passed level 1 and it's going to level 2 for review. The school passenger vans have been approved at level 1 and going to level 2. Fire department pickup truck, we were not able to justify that one, at least meeting their requirements. The 2 SUVs, they did deny, but we spoke to them and we resubmitted those, and we're waiting to see if they make it to level 2 funding.
Yep.
Quickly, what's the significance of level 1 approval to level 2? A two-part process?
It's a two-part process. Usually if it gets to level 1, at least from what I've seen, level 2 is more of a formality, but it's still early. We've only submitted a few applications, so.
But let's say we pick the school passenger vans. It's approved at level 1, but what does that mean?
Just means that it can go to the next level. It's a different group that's reviewing it.
I see. So they have a two-step process.
They have a two-step.
This is the county, so.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And they've had that before?
They've done it before, yes.
Okay. But we can talk more about this on Wednesday, I suppose.
That's all I have.
Minutes from October 24.
I will move them.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye, that's unanimous. Bill warrant?
Signed.
Any questions?
Oh, come on, can't you make that more exciting?
Okay.
That was very exciting.
We have the time for the...
It's getting late. Had we talked less, I would talk more.
Kickoff has happened or is about to happen, right?
It's about to happen.
So let's go around and see if anybody has any. Our next meeting is going to be December 5. So we swapped out November a little bit so that we could avoid our holidays. So the next meeting is actually in 3 weeks on December 5. So Anne, let's start with you if you have anything.
I have a meeting tomorrow for affordable housing. Wednesday.
Brian?
I think do we have CIPC Wednesday? Is that what you?
30th. We have the 30th of November.
30th, you're on. Okay, 30th of November, CIPC. And then I'm going to coordinate with Jim to have another meeting with the long-term building committee and figure out how we're going to handle the survey or the ballot question. Other than that, no other news.
Steve?
Bikes, they're getting excited about the transfer stations. More people are recycling. As a matter of fact, I'm going to use my trailer and bring a load to yesteryear. So they're moving forward on the bicycle part. Serpent was a pretty standard meeting. Infrastructure, this room was full, as Jim can attest to. We had people standing up in the back.
Wow.
So that's really gaining momentum. Well, what I want the board to know is the big thing out of it is they want to try to do the whole thing at once. So that's what the push is. The property owners are here. Good for us for money coming in, bad for us to figure out where we're going to get the funding to do the whole thing at once. So that's going to be the key parts to it, if we have support, whatever funding we need. But the complete, the plans and whatnot, everything will be done in January, February, correct? Kleinfeld will have the whole stretch done. So then
The whole stretch done being the engineering.
The engineering, excuse me.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, all the water and sewer will be in. So yeah, that's the thing. I mean, we had the property owners here that own along Route 6, and let's get it now. And how come it stops at the 8 overpass? Westport Flooring was here looking for that because he's got special zoning in his area too. So yeah, like I said, they were standing out the door. So I promised them right after the holidays we're going to get something together, bigger venue, and let's get it out to the public. So that's why I'm saying piggyback whatever other group that you think is going to be affected by Route 6. We've got bicycle at once improvements, of course, planning needs to plan it. The utilities are still out there too. We need to get word out to the gas and whatnot if they want to improve, because those are forever. They never inspect them. So there's still pieces of the puzzle need to be done, but we're keeping the ball rolling, and like I say, there's a lot of people interested right now.
One thing I just want to mention on that is that the rest of Route 6 does need to be sewer.
Oh, definitely does.
Just not in phase 1.
There's no doubt about it. It's just the funding and what we can do to keep going.
You can't go from one end to the other in one shot.
Right,
It's not
and the
gonna
engineering will be done. So again, when grants come by, like I explained to the public, listen, if another town backs out of something, we're just about shovel ready. I mean, with the other odds and ends, that we move up on the list. So that's the good part. We keep rolling, and now we have Mr. Fernandes on board to help us what goes on. Like, we don't want to find out, like I explain at every meeting, we don't want to find out we need a curb cut permit that takes 6 months to process later, or, especially the drainage along Route 6. That's going to be headaches with permitting. So now we can get the ball rolling.
Thank you. Dick?
The audit committee met, and we had on the squawk box, we couldn't figure out how to do this. But anyway, nobody was around to help us, But anyway, it went well. The main finding is that there were no significant deficiencies. And this, by the way, is a 2021 fiscal year audit, so this is kind of old. But good news basically there. And we covered all the bases. At one meeting we had the treasurer, and we went through some items there that she'd be tending to, most of which she was already tending to, handling that well. And the same with the town accountant, Nicole, who came to the last meeting and told us about a number of things that Tony had mentioned in his report. So there's a question for the select board. Is last year, I guess we do it every year, we have Tony either come in physically or do one of these things remotely. And he's willing to do that again, and if you want to do that, we can set that up. And it could be either the next board meeting or the one in the 12/19, or whatever the date was. What is the pleasure of the committee? What should I have an action assignment to take the request of the select board back to the audit committee?
So I would like to talk to him if he can come in for the 5th. I wouldn't have him come in on the 19th because we're going to go over the budget in detail. I think that's going to be kind of a grueling meeting.
He might find it interesting, but it'd be a long night.
Well, we would do him first. So I think I would, if he can make it the December 5th.
Okay, and it would be, remote, and it should be efficient.
It should be faster than some of the times where he's had to
It
badger
definitely-
us with material weaknesses.
This one should go fast. And it did the other night. Okay, we'll communicate that and get back to Jim and Paula on that. And that's about it from my end.
Thank you. We heard most of the work I've been doing was with the Internet Advisory Committee, so that's what we heard now. The Climate Resilience Committee continues to meet. They are trying to get a little bit more structured about who's actually on the committee versus who is an interested bystander, because everybody kind of participates in the conversation, but we have really talented people on that committee doing a lot of great work. They're looking for grant money so that they can get kind of like a project manager. So they're looking for how do you get a grant so somebody can kind of manage all the moving pieces. And then chase all the other grants and things like that. So a lot of work going on there. One of the things that they are working with the fire chief is on the emergency management plan, like evacuation routes and things like that. So there was also, they referenced this really interesting study that talked about, the 10-year flood and the 100-year flood plan and how many miles of road would be underwater in those scenarios. And it's quite shocking, actually. So more to come from Climate Resilience Committee, but they're looking for all kinds of volunteers for different subcommittees. So anybody who wants to serve on that, please come serve. And I think that is all. I had an opportunity when I went to film. I thought I was being interviewed, and I ended up in a monologue on the little what's question 5. But I was able to go to the high school and go to their TV studio at the new high school, and I met with John Resendiz, and there was a student who did the filming and things like that. It's a really great facility over there. So. And they have it set up quite nicely for the school committee to have meetings in the auditorium. So if you're going to have a really big meeting or one that you think is a big turnout, I would definitely recommend reaching out to the school department because they've got a really good setup over there.
I'll find out. We usually like to have it in the neighborhoods like Macomba, or we had it at White's, they'll give us a room.
Yeah.
We did have one in the high school, CAF, so yeah.
Yeah, I would just recommend it if you're having a big event. And who knows, there's a lot of coordination you have to do with the high school over there, but really good facility over there. There's still odds and ends on the school building project. They're still trying to get the floor done. They're still trying to get everybody's kind of ready to be done, but they're still working off punch list items and stuff. So, but the good news is they still have money. It's not a lot of money, but we are definitely not going to overrun the budget. So that is good. I think we'll still end up being a little bit less than what was expected. And then one more thing on the community television. They have asked that after our meetings, we do a quick recap so they can play a little blurb about what this meeting was and we talked about. So I agreed to do this after the meeting, a quick blurb. But we could rotate that responsibility.
Oh, boy.
Or we could have the clerk do it. So
Yeah, no.
You didn't say it that way or that way, Sean. We can put the camera there if you want to rotate.
I don't think that's what she had.
Okay.
So as we leave today, I am going to give a brief recap. Oh, you guys, I don't know how Val wants to do it, but we're going to stop recording. She's going to record separately. Anybody wants to do it for the next meeting, please feel free. It doesn't have to be me. Anything else before we go? Okay.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.